Hello and welcome to the Fanfic Club, your home for amazing stories. Today's story is, What if Hermione confessed her love to Harry during Troll Attack and their combined magic destroyed every Horcrux in Britain? Don't forget to like this video if you enjoy it, and subscribe if you haven't already. We post new stories regularly. Let's get started. Chapter 1, The Confession. The smell of pumpkin and spice hung in the air of the Great Hall, hundreds of candles floating beneath an enchanted ceiling that mirrored the stormy night sky outside. Harry Potter reached for another cauldron cake, his eyes drifting across the Halloween feast spread before the first-year Gryffindors. The seat beside him remained conspicuously empty. "Have either of you seen Hermione?" he asked, nudging Ron, who was enthusiastically working his way through a chicken leg. Ron shrugged, mouth full. "Not since Charms. Probably in the library." Harry frowned, remembering Ron's harsh words earlier. Something about having no friends. He'd seen the hurt flash across Hermione's face before she'd rushed away, books clutched to her chest. "Parvati said she's crying in the girls' bathroom," Neville offered quietly from across the table. "Been there all afternoon." A twist of guilt knotted in Harry's stomach. He should have gone after her. The feast suddenly seemed less appealing, the absence of Hermione's rapid-fire facts and occasional shy smiles leaving a strange hollow feeling. The massive doors of the Great Hall burst open. Professor Quirrell staggered in, his turban askew and terror etched on his pale face. Every eye turned as he reached Professor Dumbledore's chair, slumped against the table, and gasped, "Troll, in the dungeons, thought you ought to know." Then he collapsed in a dead faint. The hall erupted into chaos. It took several purple firecrackers from Dumbledore's wand to restore silence. "Prefects," he rumbled, "lead your houses back to the dormitories immediately." As Percy Weasley began herding the Gryffindors, Harry grabbed Ron's sleeve. "Hermione," he whispered urgently. "She doesn't know about the troll." Ron bit his lip, conflict crossing his freckled face. "Oh, all right," he muttered. "But Percy better not see us." They slipped away from the Gryffindors, ducking down a deserted corridor. The sound of quick footsteps behind them sent them diving behind a stone griffin. Peering around it, they spotted Professor Snape crossing the corridor and disappearing from view. "Where's he going?" Harry whispered. "Why isn't he down in the dungeons with the rest of the teachers?" "No idea." They crept along the next corridor, the sound of Snape's fading footsteps still echoing. "He's heading for the third floor," Harry said, but Ron held up his hand. "Can you smell something?" A foul stench reached Harry's nostrils, a mixture of old socks and the kind of public toilet no one cleans. And then they heard it, low grunting and the shuffling of enormous feet. At the end of the passage, something huge was moving toward them. They shrank into the shadows as it emerged into a patch of moonlight. It was a horrible sight. 12 feet tall, its skin a dull, granite gray, its great lumpy body like a boulder with a small bald head perched on top. The troll dragged a wooden club behind it, scraping against the stone floor. The troll stopped next to a doorway and peered inside. It waggled its long ears, seemed to make up its tiny mind, and slouched slowly into the room. "The key's in the lock," Harry muttered. "We could lock it in." "Good idea," said Ron nervously. They edged toward the open door, mouths dry. With a lunge, Harry grabbed the key, slammed the door, and locked it. "Yes." Flushed with their victory, they started to run back up the passage, but were stopped by a high-pitched, terrified scream from the chamber they'd just locked. "Oh, no," said Ron, pale as the bloody Baron. "It's the girls' bathroom." Harry gasped. "Hermione," they said together. Harry didn't hesitate. He fumbled with the key, hands shaking so badly he could barely get it into the lock. Finally, the door swung open, and they ran inside. Hermione Granger was shrinking against the wall opposite, looking as if she was about to faint. The troll was advancing on her, knocking sinks off the walls as it went. "Confuse it," Harry said desperately to Ron, seizing a tap and throwing it as hard as he could against the wall. The troll stopped a few feet from Hermione, turning its ugly head toward the noise. Its mean little eyes saw Harry, and it hesitated, then made for him instead, lifting its club. "Oi, pea-brain," yelled Ron from the other side, throwing a metal pipe at it. The troll didn't even seem to notice, but it heard the yell and paused again, turning toward Ron now. Harry seized the moment to run around it, shouting at Hermione, "Come on, run! Run!" But Hermione couldn't move. She was still flat against the wall, her mouth open with terror. The troll was now less than 15 feet from Ron, and the room was too small to maneuver around it. Harry then did something that was both very brave and very stupid. He took a running jump and managed to fasten his arms around the troll's neck from behind. The troll couldn't feel Harry hanging there, but it sensed something was wrong when Harry's wand, still in his hand, went straight up one of its nostrils. Howling with pain, it twisted and flailed, its club swinging wildly. Any second, it would rip Harry off or catch him with a terrible blow. Hermione had sunk to the floor in fright, but at the sight of Harry in mortal danger, something changed in her eyes. A realization passed over her face, not calculation, but pure clarity. "Harry," she cried out, suddenly on her feet. "I need to tell you," the troll's club swung around, nearly hitting Harry as he clung to its neck. Ron pulled out his own wand, not knowing what he was going to do but knowing he had to do something. He had never wanted to be more useful in his life. "If we don't make it," Hermione called, her voice steady now despite the tears streaming down her face, "I need you to know I love you." The words seemed to hang in the air between them. Harry's grip on the troll loosened for a fraction of a second in shock, his eyes meeting Hermione's across the chaos of the bathroom. "I've loved you since I saw you on the train," she continued, her voice growing stronger. "Not because you're Harry Potter, but because you're you." The troll roared, raising its club for another swing. Harry, still dangling from its neck, felt something warm bloom in his chest, something separate from the terror and adrenaline. "Hermione," he shouted back. What happened next defied all explanation. Harry reached his free hand out toward her, and without hesitation, Hermione raised her own. They were separated by the full breadth of the bathroom, the troll between them, but something invisible seemed to connect them across the space. Ron, wand half raised, watched in awe as a golden light began to emanate from Harry's chest, spreading outward like ripples in a pond. Similar light bloomed from Hermione, the two sources reaching for each other, growing brighter. The troll froze mid-swing, its tiny eyes widening. When the two lights met, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then came the surge, a shockwave of pure golden magic that exploded outward, filling the bathroom with blinding light. The troll was flung backward, Harry tumbling from its neck. The walls shook. Mirrors cracked. Water pipes burst. And somewhere in Britain, objects of dark magic began to scream. Miles away, in the hidden recesses of 12, Grimmauld Place, a locket tucked away in a glass cabinet shuddered violently. Inside, something that wasn't quite alive but wasn't quite dead felt the distant surge of power and new true fear. The locket began to smoke, then crack, a horrible high-pitched wail emerging from within. Black ichor leaked from its seams before the entire piece burst apart in a shower of twisted metal and dissipating darkness. In the small village of Little Hangleton, a ring buried beneath the floorboards of a decrepit shack vibrated, its black stone heating until it glowed cherry red. The fragment of soul trapped within fought desperately against the approaching golden tide, but to no avail. The stone cracked down the middle with a sound like a distant scream, then crumbled to ash. Within Hogwarts itself, hidden in a room that appeared only when needed, a diadem that had once graced the head of Rowena Ravenclaw rattled atop a bust where it had rested for 50 years. The sapphire at its center darkened, then burst, a black miasma emerging before dissolving into nothing. And in Gringotts, deep within the Lestrange vault, a golden cup engraved with a badger shook so violently that it toppled from its high shelf, clattering to the floor. Goblins would later report a sound like distant thunder from the deepest vaults, followed by the acrid smell of dark magic dispelled. Wingardium Leviosa. Ron finally managed, his voice breaking through the golden haze. The troll's club floated out of its hand, rose high into the air, turned slowly over, and dropped, with a sickening crack, onto its owner's head. The troll swayed on the spot and then fell flat on its face with a thud that made the whole room tremble. The golden light receded, drawing back into Harry and Hermione like water into sand, leaving them both standing there, hands still outstretched toward each other, expressions of equal shock on their faces. Harry got to his feet, shaking and out of breath. Ron was standing there with his wand still raised, staring at the fallen troll. It was Hermione who spoke first, her voice small. "Is it dead?" "I don't think so," said Harry. "Just knocked out." He bent down and pulled his wand out of the troll's nose. It was covered in lumpy gray troll bogies. He wiped it on the troll's trousers. A sudden slamming and loud footsteps made the three of them look up. They hadn't realized what a racket they'd been making, but someone downstairs must have heard the crashes and the troll's roars. Professor McGonagall burst into the room, followed closely by Snape and Quirrell bringing up the rear. Quirrell took one look at the troll, let out a faint whimper, and sat quickly down on a toilet, clutching his heart. But Harry barely noticed. His attention was caught by Snape, who was staring at him and Hermione with an expression that went beyond his usual contempt. It was something closer to fear. McGonagall was looking at the three of them with cold fury in her eyes, lips white. "What on earth were you thinking?" she said with ice-cold rage. "You're lucky you weren't killed. Why aren't you in your dormitory?" Then a small voice came out of the shadows. "Please, Professor McGonagall, they were looking for me. Miss Granger." Hermione had managed to get to her feet at last, though her legs were still shaking. She wouldn't meet Harry's eyes. "I went looking for the troll because I thought I could deal with it on my own. I've read all about them." Ron dropped his wand in shock. Hermione Granger, telling a downright lie to a teacher. Harry couldn't believe his ears either, but his mind was still reeling from what had happened, from what she'd said. "If they hadn't found me, I'd be dead now," Hermione continued. Harry stuck his wand up its nose, Ron knocked it out with its own club, and then there was this light. Her voice faltered. Harry noticed both Snape and Quirrell stiffen at the mention of the light. "What light, Miss Granger?" McGonagall asked sharply. Harry jumped in. "It was nothing, Professor, just the bathroom lights flickering when the troll smashed the pipes." Snape's dark eyes bore into Harry's, and he had the distinct impression the potion's master knew he was lying. For a moment, Harry thought he felt a light pressure against his thoughts, but it was gone as quickly as it had come. McGonagall turned back to Hermione. "Miss Granger, how could you think of tackling a mountain troll on your own? 5 points will be taken from Gryffindor for this. I'm very disappointed in you." Hermione hung her head. Harry was speechless. Hermione taking the blame for something she hadn't done was unimaginable. It was as if Snape had started handing out sweets. "As for you two gentlemen," McGonagall said, turning to Harry and Ron, "I still say you were lucky, but not many first years could have taken on a full-grown mountain troll. You each win Gryffindor 5 points. Professor Dumbledore will be informed of this. You may go." They hurried out of the chamber and didn't speak at all until they had climbed 2 floors up. It was a relief to be away from the smell of the troll, but also from the eyes of the professors, especially Snape's calculating gaze. "We should have gotten more than 10 points, Ron grumbled. 5, you mean, once she's taken off Hermione's. Good of her to get us out of trouble like that, Ron admitted. Mind you, we did save her. She might not have needed saving if we hadn't locked the thing in with her, Harry reminded him. They had reached the portrait of the fat lady. "Pig snout," they said and entered. The common room was packed and noisy. Everyone was eating the food that had been sent up. Hermione, however, stood alone by the door, waiting for them. There was a very embarrassed pause. Then, none of them looking at each other, they all said, "Thanks," and hurried off to get plates. From that moment on, Hermione Granger became their friend. But as Harry piled food onto his plate, avoiding Hermione's eyes across the room, he knew something far more significant had changed. She loved him. And that golden light, what had that been? He caught her looking at him once, her cheeks flushing red before she quickly turned away. In the excitement of surviving the troll, neither of them had addressed what had been said, what had happened between them. Whatever it was, Harry had a feeling it would be impossible to return to how things had been before. In the headmaster's office, Albus Dumbledore stood by the window, his wrinkled hands gripping the sill so tightly his knuckles had turned white. The instruments scattered around his circular office had gone haywire, silver contraptions spinning madly, emitting puffs of smoke in erratic patterns, some chiming discordantly while others had fallen silent. When Severus Snape entered without knocking, Dumbledore didn't turn around. "You felt it," Snape said. "It wasn't a question." "I did." Dumbledore's voice was grave. "More powerfully than I expected to in my lifetime." "The boy and the Granger girl, yes," Dumbledore cut him off. "Something extraordinary happened in that bathroom, Severus. Something beyond Hogwarts. Beyond even what I had anticipated." Snape stepped further into the office, his black robes rustling. "What does it mean?" The headmaster finally turned, and Snape was struck by how old he suddenly looked, the weight of centuries pressing down on his shoulders. "I have suspected, for some time, that Tom made certain preparations. Safeguards against mortality." Snape's already pale face whitened further. "Horcruxes," he whispered. Dumbledore nodded grimly. "I believe so. I have been searching, making discreet inquiries. I had planned to confirm my suspicions over many years, then carefully locate and destroy them one by one. And now." The headmaster gestured to the instruments surrounding them. Many had been monitoring distant objects, places of magical significance. Almost half had simply stopped working. "I believe they may all be gone," Dumbledore said softly, wonder and fear mingling in his voice. Whatever happened between Harry Potter and Hermione Granger tonight created a magical surge of such power and purity, that it sought out and destroyed every fragment of Tom's shattered soul in Britain. "That's not possible," Snape said flatly. "Their first years. Barely able to levitate feathers. And yet." Dumbledore moved to his desk, spreading out several parchments covered in spidery writing. "The wards I placed to monitor certain objects have all triggered simultaneously. The objects themselves appear to have been destroyed. What does this mean for?" Snape hesitated. "For your plans? For Potter?" Dumbledore sank heavily into his chair. "Everything has changed, Severus. I had anticipated years, decades, perhaps, before Harry would need to face his destiny. I had intended to guide him slowly, to preserve his childhood as long as possible. And now? Now we must assume Voldemort knows what has happened. If he still exists in some form, he will be desperate. Vulnerable. More dangerous than ever." Dumbledore's blue eyes had lost their twinkle entirely. "We must prepare Harry for what may come far sooner than I had hoped." On the fourth floor, in a chamber behind the History of Magic classroom, Professor Quirrell paced frantically, his hands trembling, sweat pouring down his face despite the November chill. "Master," he whispered. "Did you feel it?" The voice that answered came not from outside but from within his own head, cold and high-pitched, filled with a fury that made Quirrell whimper. "Yes," it hissed. "Potter. Always Potter. The boy has destroyed them. Somehow, he has found and destroyed my anchors. But how could he know? He's just a child." Silence. The voice was so sharp that Quirrell clutched at his turban, tears of pain springing to his eyes. "It matters not how. What matters is that we must move quickly. The stone, Quirrell. We must secure the Philosopher's Stone without delay. But Dumbledore will be distracted by these events. This is our opportunity." The voice grew thoughtful. The boy is more dangerous than I anticipated. That magic. I have felt it before. The night his mother died. Quirrell nodded frantically, though no one could see him. What shall we do, master? We adapt, the voice said coldly. Without my Horcruxes, the stone becomes essential. And the boy must die before he fully understands what he has done. Before he harnesses whatever power he now possesses. The girl too? A long pause followed, during which Quirrell held his breath. The Granger girl, Voldemort finally said. Yes. I sensed her involvement in this magic. She too must be eliminated. But first, the stone. We cannot afford to wait any longer. The next morning dawned cold and bright, sunlight streaming through the windows of Gryffindor Tower. Harry woke early, his dreams filled with golden light and distant screams. He lay in bed for a while, listening to Ron's snores, trying to make sense of the previous night. Hermione loved him. The thought still felt strange, almost impossible. No one had ever loved Harry before, at least, no one he could remember. The Dursleys certainly didn't. And he barely knew Hermione, really, though something about her had always drawn his attention. And then there was that light. That golden, warm surge that had passed between them, powerful enough to fling a mountain troll across the room. What had that been? By the time he made it down to the common room, his head was spinning with questions. He found Hermione already there, curled in an armchair with a book, though her eyes weren't moving across the page. She looked up when he entered, and her cheeks immediately flushed pink. "Morning," he said awkwardly. "Morning, Harry." She closed her book, fingers fidgeting with the corners of the pages. "About last night, the troll," he said quickly. "That was brilliant of you, taking the blame like that." "No, not that part." Her blush deepened. "The other thing." Harry's heart began to pound. Part of him wanted to pretend he didn't know what she meant, to avoid the conversation entirely. But seeing her there, brown eyes wide and vulnerable, he couldn't bring himself to dismiss it. "You mean what you said," he replied quietly. "About loving me." She nodded, looking miserable. "I shouldn't have said it. We barely know each other, and it must seem completely mad, and you probably think I'm awful, and I don't think you're awful," he interrupted. "I was surprised, that's all. Nobody's ever. I mean, I've never." He trailed off, unsure how to explain that the concept of being loved was as foreign to him as magic had been just a few months ago. "I understand if you don't feel the same way," she said in a small voice. "We can just be friends." "I'd like that too." Harry sat in the chair opposite her. "I don't know what I feel," he admitted. "But when you said it, and that light happened, I felt something. Like something inside me recognized something inside you." Hermione leaned forward. "You felt it too. That wasn't just magic from our wands. It came from inside us. What do you think it was?" She bit her lip. "I've been reading all morning, but there's nothing in standard book of spells about anything like that. It wasn't a charm or a hex or any spell I've ever heard of." "Maybe we should ask someone," Harry suggested. "Professor McGonagall, or, no." Hermione said quickly, then lowered her voice. "I don't think we should tell anyone yet. Did you see how Professor Snape looked at us? And Professor Quirrell seemed frightened." Harry nodded slowly. "I thought that too. Like they recognized what happened." "We should research it ourselves first," Hermione decided, already sounding more confident. "Figure out what it means before we tell anyone. It could be important. Or dangerous," Harry added, remembering the force of the magic that had burst from them. Before they could discuss it further, Ron came lumbering down the stairs, yawning hugely. "Morning," he mumbled. "I'm starving. Breakfast ready yet?" The moment broken, Harry and Hermione exchanged a look that contained a silent agreement. This would remain between them for now. Throughout the day, Harry noticed subtle changes. Professors watching him more closely than usual. Whispering among themselves when they thought no one was looking. Even the ghosts seemed more agitated, floating through corridors in tight clusters, conversations stopping abruptly when students approached. In Charms, Professor Flitwick squeaked and toppled off his stack of books when Harry successfully levitated his feather on the first try, something he hadn't been able to do the previous day. Very good, Mr. Potter," Flitwick exclaimed, climbing back onto his perch. "Most impressive progress." Harry exchanged a look with Hermione, whose feather was also floating perfectly. It did seem easier today, as if his magic was flowing more readily, more naturally. In Transfiguration, both Harry and Hermione managed to turn their matches into needles within minutes, earning a rare smile from Professor McGonagall and 20 points for Gryffindor. "Are you two using some kind of study method you haven't told me about?" Ron complained afterward. "My match didn't even go pointy." "Just practice," Hermione said quickly, not meeting Harry's eyes. That night, Harry's dreams were vivid and disturbing. He stood in an unfamiliar room, watching as an ornate cup shattered, black smoke pouring from the broken pieces. Then he was in a forest, a golden locket at his feet cracking open like an egg, something dark and writhing emerging before dissolving into nothing. A diadem, a ring, a large snake, all breaking apart, all releasing the same dark essence that seemed to scream as it dissipated. He woke in a cold sweat, his scar burning as if someone had pressed a hot wire to his forehead. Across the dormitory, in the dim light of dawn, he could see Ron still sleeping peacefully. Harry pressed his hand to his scar, trying to ease the pain. What were these dreams? Why did they feel so real, so significant? He dressed quietly and made his way down to the common room, surprised to find Hermione already there again, looking as tired as he felt. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. She shook her head. "Strange dreams. About objects breaking and something dark escaping from them." Harry felt a chill run down his spine. "I had the same dream." Their eyes met, and he knew she understood the implication as well as he did. Whatever had happened between them in that bathroom was still connecting them somehow. "This is beyond coincidence," she whispered. "We need to figure out what's happening to us." "To us and around us," Harry added. "Have you noticed how the professors are watching us? And my scar hurt this morning. It's only hurt once before," when, he broke off, suddenly remembering. During the start-of-term banquet, he'd felt a sharp pain in his scar when Snape had looked at him, or, he realized now, when Quirrell had turned away. "When what, Harry?" "When I've been near Professor Quirrell," he said slowly. "I thought it was Snape at first, but now I'm not so sure." Hermione's brow furrowed in thought. "And didn't you say he was acting strangely last night? More frightened than the other professors?" Harry nodded. "There's something not right about him. We should watch him," Hermione decided. "Carefully. And keep researching what happened with us." "Agreed," Harry said, feeling oddly comforted by having a plan, by not facing this strange new development alone. "We'll figure this out together." November crept across the grounds of Hogwarts, the trees shedding the last of their leaves, morning frosts growing thicker. But inside the castle, things were heating up. Harry and Hermione spent every spare moment in the library, poring over books on magical theory, bonds, and rare magical phenomena. They found little that matched what they had experienced, though Hermione did discover a passage in Magic Most Ancient about soul resonance, a rare occurrence where two magically compatible individuals could amplify each other's power. "It doesn't explain the golden light," she said, frustrated, "or why we're having the same dreams. But it's something." Their schoolwork continued to improve dramatically. Spells that once took Harry dozens of attempts now came naturally on the first or second try. Hermione, already talented, was now performing magic that left professors speechless. In Transfiguration, she successfully transformed a mouse into a snuff box so ornate that Professor McGonagall kept it on her desk as an example. Ron, meanwhile, grew increasingly confused by their behavior. Though they included him in their activities, the growing connection between Harry and Hermione was obvious, and it left him feeling like an outsider at times. "Are you two, together?" he finally asked bluntly one evening as they sat by the fire in the common room. Harry and Hermione exchanged a look. "It's complicated," Harry offered. "We're figuring it out," Hermione added. Ron rolled his eyes. "Right. Well, while you're figuring it out, Hagrid invited us down for tea tomorrow afternoon. Are you coming, or are you too busy with your secret library sessions?" Harry felt a stab of guilt. They hadn't been very good friends to Ron lately. "We'll come," he promised. Actually, Hagrid might know something about unusual magic. That got Hermione's attention. "You're right. He's been at Hogwarts for decades. He might have seen something like this before." Ron threw up his hands. "Like what? You two still haven't told me what you're researching so intently." Harry hesitated, then made a decision. Ron was their friend. He deserved to know. "Remember the troll?" he asked. "There was this light, this golden magic that came from Hermione and me. It knocked the troll back. And ever since then, things have been different." "Different how?" "Our magic is stronger," Hermione explained. "We're having the same dreams. And I think we can sense each other's feelings sometimes." Ron's eyes widened. "Blimey. Why didn't you tell me?" "We didn't know what it meant," Harry said. "We still don't. But we're trying to figure it out." "And you think Hagrid might know something?" Hermione nodded. "It's worth asking. He knows a lot about magical creatures and unusual magic." "Then we'll ask him tomorrow," Ron said decisively. "All three of us." The next afternoon found them trekking across the frost-covered grounds toward Hagrid's hut. Smoke curled from the chimney, and Fong's deep bark greeted their knock. "Back, Fong, back." Hagrid's gruff voice commanded before the door swung open. "Harry. Ron. Hermione. Come in, come in. Been wonderin' when yet visit again." The hut was warm and cramped, smelling of wood smoke and something gamey cooking in a pot over the fire. Fong immediately slobbered all over Ron's robes while Hagrid bustled around preparing tea. "Heard about your troll adventure," Hagrid said, setting down mugs the size of soup bowls. "Gave Professor McGonagall quite a turn, that did." "Actually, Hagrid," Hermione began cautiously, "we wanted to ask you about that night." "Abu, the troll. Nasty creatures, mountain trolls. Not too bright, but dangerous all the same." "Not exactly the troll," Harry said. "Something happened when we were fighting it. Something magical." Hagrid's bushy eyebrows rose above his beard. "What sort? Oh, magical?" Harry looked at Hermione, who nodded encouragingly. "There was this golden light," he explained. "It came from inside us, from me and Hermione. It knocked the troll backward and, ever since then, strange things have been happening." "What sort of strange things?" Hagrid asked, his voice suddenly careful. "Our magic is stronger," Hermione said. "We're having the same dreams. And the professors have been watching us oddly." Hagrid shifted uncomfortably in his massive chair. "Can't say I've heard of anything exactly like that." "Golden light, yes, eh?" "Like liquid sunshine," Ron offered, surprising Harry. "I saw it too. It was beautiful, actually. Powerful." Hagrid took a long drink of tea, his eyes darting to the window and back. "Might be what they call a magical bond," he said slowly. "Rare, they are. Usually happen between grown wizards and witches who've known each other for years. Not first years. We've looked up magical bonds," Hermione said eagerly. "But none of the descriptions match what we experienced." "Well, bonds come in all types," Hagrid said. "Some are made on purpose, like marriage bonds or familiar bonds. Others just happen. When two people's magic recognizes each other, like. Is it dangerous? Harry asked. Hagrid hesitated a moment too long. Not dangerous, no. Unusual, is all. But Harry caught the flicker in Hagrid's eyes, the way his massive hands tightened around his mug. He was hiding something. Hagrid, Harry pressed, have you told Professor Dumbledore about this? About what we've just told you? Told Dumbledore? Why would I? Hagrid broke off, flustered. I mean, I haven't spoken to Ye 3 in weeks, have I? Can't tell him what I don't know. But his eyes didn't meet Harry's, and Harry knew, Dumbledore was already aware of what had happened in that bathroom. The headmaster knew about the golden light, about their strengthening magic. And that meant it was significant, perhaps more significant than they'd realized. Before Harry could press further, a shadow passed by the window. Hagrid jumped up with surprising speed for such a large man. Right, well, lovely to see Ye 3, but I've got to get back to my duties. Important gamekeeper business, you know. But we've only just arrived, Hermione protested. And we've got more questions, added Ron. Another time, perhaps, Hagrid said, already ushering them toward the door. Come back next week, and we'll have a proper chat. As they were bustled outside, Harry caught a glimpse of a tall figure in purple robes walking away from Hagrid's hut toward the Forbidden Forest. Dumbledore. Had he been coming to meet Hagrid? Or had he been watching them? That was odd, Ron said as they trudged back toward the castle. He couldn't get rid of us fast enough. He knows something, Hermione agreed. Something he's not supposed to tell us. Harry nodded grimly. And I think Dumbledore's behind it. He doesn't want us to know what's happening to us. The question is, why? That night, Harry's dreams were more vivid than ever. He stood in a dark chamber, watching as Professor Quirrell unwrapped his purple turban. But instead of the back of Quirrell's head, there was another face, the most terrible face Harry had ever seen. Chalk white with glaring red eyes and slits for nostrils, like a snake. Harry Potter, it whispered. You have meddled in matters beyond your understanding. You have destroyed my precious safeguards. For this, you will pay. Harry tried to run, but his feet were rooted to the spot. The girl too, the face continued. The Granger girl. Her love has awoken something ancient, something I had not anticipated. Together, you have upset the balance. Together, you will die. The scene shifted. Harry was standing in a vast chamber, stone serpents lining the walls. At his feet lay Hermione, deathly pale, barely breathing. The same terrible face floated above her, but now it had a body, tall, thin, with long spider-like fingers that caressed Hermione's cheek. Love, it spat. Dumbledore's great weapon. How fitting that it will be love that destroys you both. Harry woke with a shout, his scar burning so fiercely that tears sprang to his eyes. Across the dormitory, Ron stirred but didn't wake. Harry fumbled for his glasses, his heart hammering against his ribs. It had been a dream, just a dream. But it had felt so real, so present. And the mention of Dumbledore, of love as a weapon. He needed to talk to Hermione. Now. Slipping out of bed, he padded silently down to the common room. As he'd somehow known she would be, Hermione was already there, huddled in an armchair, her face ashen. You saw it too, she whispered as he approached. The face on the back of Quirrell's head. The chamber with the snakes. Harry nodded, dropping into the chair beside her. It was Voldemort. I'm sure of it. Hermione flinched at the name but didn't correct him. He said we destroyed his safeguards. What did he mean? I don't know, Harry admitted. But he's angry. And he's using Quirrell somehow, possessing him, maybe. We have to tell someone, Hermione insisted. Dumbledore already knows something, Harry interrupted. He's been having Hagrid watch us. And in the dream, Voldemort mentioned him, said love was Dumbledore's weapon. Hermione's cheeks flushed slightly at the word love, but her expression remained serious. If Dumbledore knows Quirrell is possessed by you-know-who, why hasn't he done anything? Maybe he can't prove it, Harry suggested. Or maybe he's waiting for something. Either way, I don't think we can count on him to help us directly. So what do we do? Harry ran a hand through his messy hair, his scar still throbbing dully. First, we figure out what these safeguards are that Voldemort thinks we destroyed. That might tell us what he's planning. Second, we keep an eye on Quirrell, figure out what he's up to. And third, Hermione added softly, we need to understand what happened between us. What this connection is and how to use it. Harry nodded, feeling a strange mix of fear and determination. Whatever was happening, they were in it together. One more thing, he said. In the dream, you were in danger. I think Voldemort might try to use you to get to me. Hermione's eyes widened, but to his surprise, she didn't look frightened, she looked resolute. Then he doesn't understand what he's dealing with. We're stronger together. That's what the golden light proved. As if summoned by her words, Harry felt a warm glow begin in his chest, not the blinding surge they'd experienced with the troll, but a gentle ember of that same golden light. Hermione's eyes widened, and he knew she felt it too. We'll figure this out, she promised, reaching out to take his hand. Where their skin touched, the light pulsed brighter for a moment before settling into a steady, comforting warmth. Together. Over the next weeks, as November gave way to December and snow began to blanket the grounds, Harry and Hermione continued their research while keeping a close watch on Quirrell. They noticed he was absent more frequently, his stuttering more pronounced when he returned. Twice, they spotted him heading toward the third-floor corridor, the one Dumbledore had declared out of bounds at the start of term. Their magical abilities continued to grow, particularly when they worked together. In charms, they discovered they could channel spells through each other, amplifying their power. Flitwick was beside himself with excitement when they levitated a desk together, their wands moving in perfect synchronization, the desk floating higher and more steadily than should have been possible for first years. Extraordinary coordination, the tiny professor squeaked. I haven't seen such natural magical resonance in decades. Ron, to his credit, took their growing abilities and connection in stride. As long as you help me with my homework, I don't care if you can make the castle fly, he declared pragmatically. The dreams continued, becoming more detailed. Harry and Hermione saw fragments of what they came to realize were memories, a handsome dark-haired boy opening a hidden chamber beneath the school, the same boy, older now, speaking with a plump witch about objects called Horcruxes, a woman placing a diadem in a hidden room, a locket being hidden in a cave filled with walking corpses. I think I know what the safeguards are, Hermione said one night as they sat in a secluded corner of the library. They're Horcruxes, objects containing pieces of Voldemort's soul. That's what we destroyed with our magic that night. Harry felt sick. He split his soul. Is that even possible? According to this, Hermione pushed a heavy tome toward him, open to a page with spidery writing, it's the darkest magic there is. A wizard can split his soul by committing murder, then seal part of it in an object. As long as that object exists, he can't truly die. And we destroyed them, Harry whispered. All of them. That's why he's desperate, Hermione realized. That's why he's trying to get past the third-floor corridor. Whatever's hidden there must be important, something that could help him regain power even without his Horcruxes. Harry's mind raced. The package Hagrid collected from Gringotts when we went shopping, he said it was Hogwarts business, very secret. What if that's what's being guarded on the third floor? And what if Quirrell, Voldemort, is trying to steal it? They looked at each other, the implications sinking in. If Voldemort managed to regain a body, to return to power. We need to know what's being guarded, Harry decided. And we need to make sure Quirrell doesn't get it. On the last day of term before Christmas holidays, Harry was returning from Quidditch practice, his Nimbus 2000 slung over his shoulder, when he spotted Quirrell slipping into an unused classroom. Acting on instinct, he moved closer, crouching beside the partially open door. Master, I need more tea time," Quirrell was saying, though Harry couldn't see who he was talking to. "The dog is impossible to get past, and Snape suspects, excuses," hissed a cold, high voice that made Harry's blood freeze in his veins. It was the voice from his dreams, Voldemort's voice. "Three-headed dogs are simple creatures. Play them music, and they sleep. This you should know, you fool." "Why yes, Master. Of course. But the other enchantments are the work of teachers. Teachers whose minds are simple, whose protections will be childishly easy to bypass. You have until the new year, Quirrell. The stone must be mine before Potter and the girl realize the full extent of what they've done." Harry leaned forward, straining to hear more, when his broom slipped from his shoulder, the handle hitting the stone floor with a soft tap. It wasn't loud, but in the silent corridor, it might as well have been an explosion. "What was that?" the cold voice demanded. Harry didn't wait. He snatched up his broom and ran, footsteps echoing down the corridor. Behind him, he heard the classroom door slam open, Quirrell's hurried steps following. "Potter!" Quirrell called, his voice suddenly free of any stutter. "Stop right there." Harry rounded a corner, then another, racing toward Gryffindor Tower. He had to find Hermione, had to tell her what he'd heard. The stone, whatever it was protected by a three-headed dog and other enchantments. And Voldemort wanted it desperately. He burst into the common room, breathless, drawing curious stares from the scattered Gryffindors. Hermione was by the fire, a book open on her lap. One look at his face, and she was on her feet. "What happened?" she asked, pulling him to a quiet corner. "Quirrell," Harry gasped, still catching his breath. "Voldemort. I heard them talking. There's something called the stone hidden on the third floor, guarded by a three-headed dog and other protections. Voldemort wants it before we realize the full extent of what we've done." Hermione's eyes widened. "A three-headed dog? Like Cerberus from Greek mythology? I don't know what it's called, but it must be huge if it's guarding something important." She bit her lip, thinking. "The stone, wait here." She dashed up to the girls' dormitory, returning moments later with a small, leather-bound book. "I checked this out weeks ago for light reading." "You call that light?" Harry asked, eyeing the substantial tome. Hermione ignored him, flipping through pages until she found what she was looking for. "Here. Nicholas Flamel, famous alchemist and only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone." "The what?" "The Philosopher's Stone. It can transform any metal into pure gold and produces the elixir of life, which makes the drinker immortal." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Harry, that must be what Voldemort's after, a new body and immortality." The pieces fell into place. "And he's desperate to get it now because we destroyed his Horcruxes. It's his only option left." Hermione nodded grimly. "We can't let him get it." "But what do we do?" "Tell Dumbledore." Harry hesitated. "I'm not sure. Dumbledore must already know Quirrell is possessed, why else would he have the stone here at Hogwarts? It's like he's using it as bait." "Bait? For Voldemort?" Hermione looked horrified. "But that's incredibly dangerous. With students in the castle." "I know. That's why I'm not sure we can trust him with this. What if we're part of his plan somehow?" They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the situation pressing down on them. "We should go down there," Harry finally said. "See what's guarding the stone for ourselves. Then we can decide what to do." "Go down, past the three-headed dog?" Hermione looked skeptical. "Voldemort said music puts it to sleep. We could bring a flute or something." "Harry, this is mad. We're first years. If Voldemort can't get past the protections, but we have something Voldemort doesn't," Harry interrupted, taking her hand. Where their skin touched, the now familiar golden warmth bloomed. We have this. Whatever it is. Hermione looked down at their joined hands, then back at his face. When? Tonight. After everyone's asleep. If we're going to stop him, we need to know what we're dealing with. Under the cover of Harry's invisibility cloak, a mysterious Christmas gift he'd received that morning, Harry, Hermione, and Ron, who had flatly refused to be left behind, crept through the darkened corridors toward the third floor. Harry carried a small wooden flute Hagrid had carved for him, while Hermione clutched her wand, already mentally reviewing every spell she knew that might prove useful. "This is mental," Ron whispered as they approached the forbidden corridor. "Absolutely mental." "You didn't have to come," Hermione reminded him. "And let you two have all the glory when you save the stone." "Not likely." Despite the tension, Harry felt a surge of gratitude for his friends. Whatever they were walking into, at least they were together. The door to the third-floor corridor was already ajar. "Snape's already gone through," Ron whispered. "Or Quirrell," Harry corrected. It could be Quirrell. Pushing the door open wider, they were met with the sight of an enormous three-headed dog. All three heads were awake, noses sniffing in their direction despite the invisibility cloak. Harry quickly raised the flute to his lips and began to play. He wasn't much of a musician, but the random notes seemed to work. The dog's eyes began to droop, and slowly, it slumped to the ground, fast asleep. "Keep playing," Hermione whispered, slipping out from under the cloak. She pointed to a trapdoor beneath one of the dog's massive paws. "That must be the way through." Working together, they managed to shift the paw and open the trapdoor. Below was nothing but darkness. "I'll go first," Harry said, pausing in his playing just long enough to speak. "If anything happens to me, get out and find McGonagall." Before either could protest, he handed the flute to Ron and lowered himself through the opening. After a moment of falling, he landed on something soft and yielding. "It's okay," he called up. "It's a soft landing." Ron and Hermione followed, the dog's growls resuming the moment the music stopped. They found themselves sitting on a strange plant, its tendrils already beginning to twist around their legs. "Devil's snare." Hermione gasped, recognizing it immediately. "It likes the dark and damp. So light a fire," Harry suggested, struggling as the plant wound tighter. "But there's no wood," Hermione cried, momentarily panicking. "Have you gone mad?" Ron bellowed. "Are you a witch or not?" "Oh, right." Hermione pulled out her wand, waved it, and sent a jet of bluebell flames at the plant. Within seconds, the devil's snare loosened its grip, shrinking away from the light and warmth, and they were able to pull free. "This way," Harry said, pointing to a stone passageway. "It's the only way forward." The passage sloped downward, leading them deeper beneath the school. The sound of rustling and clinking grew louder as they approached the next chamber. "Sounds like birds," Ron commented. But they weren't birds. The next chamber was filled with small, jewel-bright flying keys. On the opposite side was a heavy wooden door. "We need to catch the key to that door," Hermione said, examining the lock. "It'll be old-fashioned, probably silver, like the handle." Harry spotted broomsticks leaning against the wall. "We've got to fly and catch the key." Being the youngest seeker in a century had its advantages. After a few minutes of careful searching and swift flying, Harry managed to corner and catch a large silver key with bright blue wings, now bent from being caught once before. The key turned in the lock, and the door swung open to reveal an enormous chessboard with pieces taller than they were. "Now what?" Hermione whispered. "It's obvious, isn't it?" said Ron. "We've got to play our way across." Ron, the best chess player among them, took charge, directing Harry, Hermione, and himself as pieces in the game. The white pieces showed no mercy, smashing their opponents and dragging them off the board. "Almost there," Ron muttered, studying the board intently. Then his face paled. "I've got to be taken." No. Harry and Hermione shouted. That's chess. Ron snapped. You've got to make sacrifices. I'll make my move, the Queen will take me, and Harry, you'll be free to checkmate the King. Before they could argue further, Ron stepped forward. The White Queen struck him hard across the head with her stone arm, and he crashed to the floor, unconscious. Shaking, Harry moved 3 spaces to the left. The White King took off his crown and threw it at Harry's feet. They had won. After ensuring Ron was breathing steadily, Harry and Hermione continued to the next chamber, where they were met with a disgusting smell. A troll, even larger than the one they had faced on Halloween, lay unconscious on the floor, a bloody lump on its head. Glad we didn't have to fight that one, Harry muttered as they stepped carefully around it. The next room contained a table with 7 differently shaped bottles standing in a line. As they stepped over the threshold, purple flames sprang up behind them, and black flames ahead. Snapes, said Hermione, picking up a roll of parchment lying next to the bottles. It's a logic puzzle. She read it carefully, then began examining the bottles, muttering to herself. Finally, she pointed to the smallest bottle. That one will get us through the black flames, toward the stone. Harry picked it up. There was barely enough for one swallow. Which one will get you back through the purple flames? Hermione pointed to a rounded bottle at the right end of the line. That one. Harry looked at the tiny bottle in his hand, then at Hermione. You drink that one, he said. Go back and get Ron. Use the brooms from the flying key room to get out of the trapdoor. Get McGonagall or someone, but Harry, Hermione's voice trembled, what if you know who's in there? I got lucky once, didn't I? Harry said, pointing at his scar. And we've got something he doesn't know about. He reached out, touching her hand, feeling the now familiar golden warmth spread between them. I'll be okay. Hermione suddenly threw her arms around him, hugging him fiercely. I meant what I said that night, she whispered in his ear. I do love you, Harry Potter. The golden light flickered between them, stronger now, warming Harry from the inside out. Something clicked into place in his mind, a certainty, a knowing. I think I love you too, he whispered back. I just didn't know what it felt like before. When they broke apart, both were surrounded by a faint golden glow. Hermione's eyes widened. It's happening again, she breathed. The magic. Harry looked down at his hands, seeing the golden light pulsing just beneath his skin. I think it gets stronger when we acknowledge it. When we don't fight it. Be careful, she said, squeezing his hand once more. Come back. She drank from her bottle and shuddered. It's like ice. Go, quickly, Harry urged. With one last look, Hermione turned and walked through the purple flames. Harry took a deep breath, raised the small bottle to his lips, and drank. It was indeed like ice flooding his body. He steeled himself and stepped forward through the black flames. They couldn't hurt him, he felt nothing. For a moment, he saw nothing but dark fire, then he was on the other side, in the final chamber. Someone was already there, but it wasn't Snape or even Quirrell. It was Professor Dumbledore. Harry, the headmaster said gravely. I've been expecting you. Chapter 2, Echoes and Revelations. Harry froze in the doorway, the golden light still shimmering beneath his skin. The chamber was circular, with a high-domed ceiling from which hung ancient lanterns casting a soft blue glow. In the center stood the mirror of Amidst. Harry recognized it immediately from his late-night wanderings before Christmas. And before it, looking somehow both ancient and ageless in his midnight blue robes, stood Albus Dumbledore. Professor, Harry managed, his voice catching. We thought, that Professor Quirrell was here. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled, though his expression remained grave. He was, briefly. He fled when he sensed my approach. Harry stepped further into the chamber, the black flames extinguishing behind him. The golden light surrounding him pulsed once, then began to fade. Ah, Dumbledore murmured, observing the receding glow. Fascinating. Truly remarkable. You know what it is, Harry said. Not a question. The headmaster nodded slowly. I have theories, Harry. Strong ones. But before we discuss that particular magic, I must ask, why did you come here tonight? To protect the Philosopher's Stone, Harry answered without hesitation. Voldemort wants it. He's been possessing Quirrell, using him to try to steal it. And how did you come by this knowledge? I overheard them talking. And Hermione and we've been having dreams. Harry hesitated, then decided on complete honesty. Dreams about Voldemort. About objects he created called Horcruxes. We think we destroyed them somehow. That night with the troll. Something flickered in Dumbledore's eyes, surprise, perhaps, or concern. Indeed. And what do you know of Horcruxes, Harry? They're containers for pieces of Voldemort's soul. He made them so he couldn't die. But that golden light, whatever happened between me and Hermione, it destroyed them all. Dumbledore was silent for a long moment, studying Harry as if seeing him for the first time. Then he sighed, suddenly looking every one of his many years. I had intended to shield you from these truths for many years yet, he said quietly. To preserve what childhood you might have. But it seems fate, or perhaps something greater, has other plans. He gestured to a stone bench against the wall that Harry hadn't noticed before. Sit with me, Harry. There are things you need to understand. Harry hesitated, thinking of Hermione and Ron waiting above. My friends are safely on their way back up through the trapdoor. Professor McGonagall is attending to Mr. Weasley's injuries, which I assure you are minor. Reluctantly, Harry sat beside the headmaster, who folded his hands in his lap, staring thoughtfully at the mirror of Amidst. First, I must commend you and your friends for your exceptional bravery and cleverness in making it this far. Few fully qualified wizards could have done as much. It was mostly Hermione, Harry admitted. She's brilliant. Miss Granger is indeed extraordinary, Dumbledore agreed with a slight smile. Though I suspect her recent increase in magical ability has as much to do with you as with her natural talents. Harry's eyes widened. You mean the golden light? Our connection? Precisely. What you and Miss Granger experienced that Halloween night is an exceptionally rare magical phenomenon. So rare, in fact, that I know of only one other documented case in wizarding history. What is it called? It has many names in different magical traditions. Soul resonance. Heart magic. The aurum vinculum, the golden bond. Dumbledore's eyes grew distant. It occurs when two magically compatible individuals experience a moment of perfect emotional alignment, often triggered by mortal danger, and their magic recognizes and reaches for each other. Harry thought back to that moment in the bathroom, the Trolls Club raised, Hermione's declaration of love still hanging in the air. The perfect synchronicity of feeling that had passed between them. But we barely knew each other then, he said. How could our magic be compatible? Magic often understands what we do not yet comprehend ourselves, Dumbledore replied. It sees beyond surface familiarity to deeper patterns of compatibility, of potential. You and Miss Granger may seem quite different in temperament, but your magical cores are remarkably similar in structure and strength. When she expressed her feelings you were perhaps already beginning to reciprocate, though you may not have recognized them, it created the perfect conditions for the bond to form. Harry felt his cheeks warm slightly. And this bond, it's why our magic is stronger now. Why we're having the same dreams. Yes. The bond connects you at a fundamental level, allowing your magic to amplify each other's, to share experiences, sensations, even memories at times. It will continue to grow and evolve as you do. Is it permanent? Harry asked, unsure how he felt about the question. Dumbledore smiled gently. The bond itself is indeed permanent, though its expression may change over time. But it is not a prison, Harry. It is more like a door that has been opened between you. You may choose how widely to open it, or even to close it for periods, but the door itself will always exist. Harry nodded slowly, processing this. It was overwhelming but not unwelcome. He had grown used to the warm connection with Hermione, had begun to rely on it in ways he hadn't fully acknowledged. And the Horcruxes, he asked, returning to the more pressing matter. Did our bond really destroy them? Dumbledore's expression grew somber. Yes, Harry. All evidence suggests that the initial surge of the aurum vinculum generated a wave of exceptionally pure magical energy, energy fundamentally opposed to the dark magic that created the Horcruxes. It sought them out and destroyed them, all across Britain. But how? We were just in a bathroom at Hogwarts. Distance means little to magic of this nature, Dumbledore explained. And the objects themselves were connected, each containing a fragment of the same soul. Once the magic found one, it could follow the connections to the others. Harry tried to absorb this. So Voldemort can be killed now? Properly killed? He can die, yes. But first, he would need a body, which is precisely why he seeks the Philosopher's Stone so desperately. Dumbledore gestured to the mirror. I have hidden it within the mirror, using a charm that would only allow someone who wanted to find the stone, but not use it, to retrieve it. Clever, Harry admitted. But sir, if Voldemort is vulnerable now, why not just find him? Stop him before he gets a body. Dumbledore's eyes clouded. If only it were so simple. Voldemort's current form is that of a spirit, insubstantial, capable of possessing willing hosts but difficult to detect or contain. Professor Quirrell has been his willing vessel for months now, but even I cannot simply extract Voldemort from him without killing Quirrell in the process, an act I am reluctant to perform, despite the circumstances. So what do? We protect the stone. We strengthen the school's defenses. And we prepare you, Harry, you and Miss Granger, for what may come. Dumbledore's gaze grew penetrating. The bond you share has already accelerated your magical development significantly. It must be properly understood and channeled. Harry straightened, a surge of determination flowing through him. Teach us, then. Whatever we need to know to face him. I intend to, Dumbledore assured him. But there is one more thing you should understand about your bond and its connection to Voldemort. When your parents died, Harry, Voldemort's curse rebounded because of your mother's sacrifice. Her love created a protection in your blood. That protection resonated with the love Miss Granger expressed, amplifying the bond's formation and power. Harry absorbed this, a lump forming in his throat. So my mother's love is still protecting me? Through Hermione? In a manner of speaking, yes. The magics are complementary, interwoven now. Dumbledore stood, extending a hand to help Harry up. Which brings me to a decision I've been contemplating since Halloween. I believe it would be unwise for you to return to your aunt and uncle this summer. Harry's heart leapt. Really? The blood protection your home provides has been compromised, not weakened, precisely, but altered by your bond with Miss Granger. I believe you would be safer with a magical family who can monitor and support your developing abilities. The Weasleys? Harry suggested hopefully. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. A possibility, certainly. Though I suspect arrangements will need to be made for Miss Granger as well, given the nature of your bond. Distance will likely prove uncomfortable for you both in its early stages. Before Harry could process the implications of this, the headmaster turned toward the exit. But these are matters for another day. For now, let us rejoin your friends. I imagine they are quite anxious about your welfare. As they walked back through the chambers, the potions room, past the unconscious troll, across the chessboard where teachers were now removing the pieces, Harry's mind raced with questions. But one pressed more urgently than the others. Professor, he said as they approached the Devil's Snare room, now subdued by magical light, you said there was only one other documented case of this bond in history. Who was it? Dumbledore glanced back, something unreadable in his ancient eyes. "Godric Gryffindor and Rowena Ravenclaw," he said quietly. "The founders of your houses. Their bond helped build Hogwarts itself, and left traces of their combined magic that linger in these walls even now." With that bombshell, he turned and continued walking, leaving Harry to follow in stunned silence. Hermione paced the hospital wing, unable to sit still despite Madame Pomfrey's stern instructions. Ron lay in one of the beds, a bandage around his head but his color good, already complaining about being confined. Harry had not yet returned from beneath the trapdoor, and the waiting was unbearable. "He's with Dumbledore," she repeated to herself for the dozenth time. "He's safe. I'd know if he wasn't." And it was true, she would know. The connection between them had strengthened to the point where she could sense his general state even at a distance. Right now, she felt confusion, shock, but not fear or pain. "Will you sit down?" Ron grumbled from his bed. "You're making me dizzy." "Sorry," she said, perching briefly on the edge of a chair before popping back up. "I just can't." The hospital wing doors swung open, and Harry walked in, followed by Professor Dumbledore. Hermione didn't think, she ran to him, throwing her arms around him in a fierce hug. The now familiar golden glow sparked at the contact, warming them both. "You're all right," she breathed against his shoulder. "I'm fine," he assured her, hugging her back just as tightly. Quirrell wasn't even there, Dumbledore got there first. They separated, both a little embarrassed at their display in front of the headmaster, whose eyes twinkled knowingly. "Miss Granger," he greeted her. "I understand congratulations are in order. Your quick thinking and extensive knowledge were instrumental in navigating the challenges protecting the stone." "Thank you, sir," she said, flushing slightly. "But I couldn't have done it without Harry and Ron." "Indeed. Teamwork is a powerful force." Dumbledore glanced between her and Harry. "Though perhaps not as powerful as other forces at work here." Hermione's blush deepened. She could tell from Harry's expression that Dumbledore knew about their bond, had perhaps explained things to Harry that they had been trying to understand for weeks. "Oi!" Ron called from his bed. "Is anyone going to tell me what happened after I nobly sacrificed myself? Did you get the stone? Was Snape there?" Dumbledore chuckled. "I shall leave you three to catch up. Harry, Miss Granger, we will speak further tomorrow about the matters we discussed." His expression grew more serious. "In the meantime, I must ask that you remain within the castle. Recent events have made the grounds less secure than I would like." With that cryptic warning, he swept from the room, his midnight blue robes billowing behind him. As soon as he was gone, Harry and Hermione rushed to Ron's bedside, filling him in on everything that had happened, from Dumbledore's presence in the chamber to the truth about Quirrell and Voldemort. "Blimey," Ron breathed when they finished. "So you know who's been right under our noses all year?" And Dumbledore knew. "He suspected, at least," Harry said. "I think he was waiting, watching to see what Quirrell would do." Using the stone as bait, Hermione added, her tone disapproving. "It's terribly dangerous. And this bond thing," Ron continued, gesturing between them. "That's why you two have been all glowy and extra magical lately. Because Hermione said she loved you during the troll attack." Both Harry and Hermione blushed furiously. "It's called the aurum vinculum," Hermione said, falling back on facts to hide her embarrassment. "Apparently it's incredibly rare. Dumbledore told Harry there's only been one other documented case. Gryffindor and Ravenclaw," Harry supplied. "The founders." Ron's eyes widened. "Bloody hell. So you two are like, the second coming of the founders or something?" "Don't be ridiculous," Hermione said quickly. "We're just two first years who happen to be compatible magically. Who accidentally destroyed all of you-know-who's Horcruxes and are now connected by some super-rare magical bond," Ron pointed out dryly. "Totally normal stuff, that." Despite the tension of the night, Harry found himself laughing, and soon the others joined in, the absurdity of their situation momentarily overwhelming its seriousness. When they calmed, Ron's expression grew more thoughtful. So what happens now? You know who's still out there, still trying to get the stone. Dumbledore said they're increasing the castle's protections, Harry replied. And he wants to teach us, me and Hermione, about our bond. How to use it properly. Special lessons with Dumbledore, Ron mused. That's, actually pretty cool. Hermione reached out, placing her hand on Ron's. We'll still tell you everything, Ron. You're our best friend. This doesn't change that. Ron smiled, but Harry caught a flicker of something in his eyes, uncertainty, perhaps, or a hint of the insecurity that sometimes plagued him. Course it doesn't, he said with forced lightness. Someone's got to keep you two geniuses grounded, right? Before either could respond, Madame Pomfrey bustled over, shooing Harry and Hermione away from the bed. Mr. Weasley needs rest, she insisted. And by the looks of it, so do you too. Off to your dormitories, now. You can visit again in the morning. As they walked back to Gryffindor Tower, Harry filled Hermione in on the rest of his conversation with Dumbledore, the explanation of the bond, the connection to his mother's protection, and the possibility that they might not be separated over the summer. Not go back to the Dursleys. Hermione said, eyes wide. Harry, that's wonderful. I know, he agreed, unable to keep the grin from his face. Though Dumbledore said arrangements would need to be made for you too, because of the bond. Hermione's brow furrowed. What did he mean? He said distance might be uncomfortable for us while the bond is still new. Harry hesitated, suddenly worried. Would that be all right? If we had to stay close over the summer? I don't want to impose on your time with your parents. Oh, Harry. Hermione squeezed his hand, a small pulse of golden light warming their fingers. Of course it would be all right. My parents will understand. They're quite reasonable people. As they reached the portrait of the fat lady, Harry stopped, turning to face her fully. Hermione, about what I said down there, when we thought we might be facing Voldemort. About loving you too. I meant it. He swallowed hard, finding this confession somehow more difficult in the quiet corridor than it had been in the face of potential death. I've never said that to anyone before. Never had anyone to say it to. I'm not sure I really knew what it meant. But I think I do now. Hermione's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. I meant it too. Both times. I know we're young, and maybe it's not the same kind of love that adults talk about, but it's real. I feel it, here. She placed her free hand over her heart. As if responding to their words, the golden glow bloomed between them again, stronger than before, illuminating the corridor with warm light. The fat lady, who had been pretending not to eavesdrop, let out a small gasp. Well, I never, she exclaimed. An aurum vinculum. At your ages. Dumbledore will need to hear about this immediately. He already knows, Harry informed her dryly. Password? The fat lady asked, flustered. Caput Draconis, Hermione supplied, and the portrait swung open. The common room was empty, the fire burning low. Everyone else had gone to bed hours ago. Harry and Hermione sat together on the sofa, neither quite ready to separate for the night. Do you think Quirrell will try again? Hermione asked quietly. To get the stone. Harry nodded grimly. Voldemort's desperate now. He'll take bigger risks. Then we need to be ready. Hermione's voice took on the determined tone he recognized from study sessions. We should practice with the bond, learn to control it better. If Dumbledore's going to teach us, we should be prepared. How do we practice? Hermione bit her lip, thinking. Well, we know it responds to our emotions, especially when we're in physical contact. Maybe we could start there. Try to direct the energy consciously instead of just letting it happen. Harry nodded, extending his hand. Hermione took it, their fingers intertwining naturally. The familiar warmth began immediately, golden light blooming at their joined hands. "Now focus," Hermione instructed, closing her eyes. "Try to feel the connection between us. See if you can direct the energy." Harry closed his eyes as well, concentrating on the warm flow moving between them. It felt like a current, a stream of pure energy connecting his core to Hermione's. Tentatively, he tried to push the flow a bit more from his side to hers. Hermione gasped. "I felt that. It got stronger on my end." Encouraged, Harry focused harder, visualizing the energy gathering in his chest and flowing down his arm to their joined hands. The light intensified, spreading further up their arms. "Now you try," he suggested. Hermione's brow furrowed in concentration. After a moment, Harry felt a distinct pulse of energy flow back to him, not just warmth, but something more complex. A feeling that wasn't his own, determination tinged with wonder and deep affection. "I can feel what you're feeling," he whispered, amazed. "I was trying to send you my emotions," Hermione confirmed, eyes wide. "Did it work?" Harry nodded. Determination. Wonder. And he blushed slightly. Something else. It was Hermione's turn to blush. "Oh. Well, yes. That too." They practiced for nearly an hour, taking turns sending energy back and forth, gradually gaining more control over the flow. By the time exhaustion began to overtake them, they could direct the golden light to specific parts of their bodies, illuminating just their joined hands, or creating a gentle glow around their heads. "We should get some sleep," Hermione finally said, stifling a yawn. "It's been an incredibly long day." Harry nodded, but neither moved to break their contact. The thought of separating, of going to their respective dormitories, felt strangely daunting. "What if we have more dreams?" Harry asked. "About Voldemort?" "Then we'll face them together," Hermione said firmly. "Like we've faced everything else." With reluctance, they finally stood, their hands still joined. "Good night, Harry," Hermione whispered, leaning forward to press a quick, shy kiss to his cheek. The golden light flared brightly at the contact, briefly illuminating the entire common room. "Good night, Hermione," he replied, his cheek tingling where her lips had touched. They separated slowly, the golden glow dimming but not disappearing entirely as they made their way to their respective staircases. Even after they could no longer see each other, Harry could feel Hermione's presence in his mind, a warm, comforting awareness that stayed with him as he climbed into bed and drifted into sleep. The next morning brought chaos to Hogwarts. As Harry, Hermione, and Ron, released from the hospital wing with a clean bill of health, entered the Great Hall for breakfast, they were met with a buzzing atmosphere of confusion and speculation. Professor Quirrell was nowhere to be seen at the staff table, and Professor McGonagall stood speaking intensely with Professors Flitwick and Sprout. "Something's happened," Hermione whispered, noting the strained expressions of the teachers. They found out what when Dumbledore rose to address the school midway through the meal. "Students, I must inform you of a serious security breach that occurred during the night," he announced, his voice grave. "Professor Quirrell has fled the castle, taking with him several dangerous magical artifacts from the restricted section of the library. Until further notice, all outdoor activities, including Quidditch practice and herbology classes, are suspended. Students will move between classes in groups escorted by prefects or professors. Evening curfew will begin immediately after dinner." A wave of murmurs swept through the hall. Quidditch cancelled. Escorted to classes. It was unprecedented. "Do not be alarmed," Dumbledore continued, raising his hands for quiet. "These measures are precautionary. The castle remains secure, and you are in no danger within these walls. I ask for your cooperation during this time." As he sat down, the murmuring erupted into full-blown conversations. Theories ranged from Quirrell's suffering a nervous breakdown to him being a secret ministry agent recalled for an emergency. "He's gone to Voldemort," Harry said quietly to Ron and Hermione. Or gone to find another way to get the stone. But why take things from the library? Hermione wondered. What could be there that would help him? Dark spell books, maybe? Ron suggested. Dad says there are some pretty nasty things in restricted sections. Harry was about to respond when he noticed something odd. At the center of the Gryffindor table, where there had previously been nothing but platters of food, now sat a small, ornate golden cup. "Do either of you see that?" he asked, pointing. Hermione's eyes widened. The cup. It just appeared. What cup? Ron asked, looking confused. There are loads of cups on the table. Not the goblets, that small golden one with the badger engraved on it, Hermione clarified. Ron squinted. I don't see anything like that. Harry and Hermione exchanged a look. Through their bond, Harry could sense her confusion and growing concern. Maybe only we can see it, he suggested quietly. Because of the bond. Carefully, making sure no one was watching too closely, Harry reached for the cup. His fingers passed right through it as if it were a ghost. It's not really there, he whispered. Or at least, not physically. Harry, Hermione said slowly, I think that's Hufflepuff's cup. From our dreams. One of the Horcruxes. Before Harry could respond, the cup began to glow with an eerie light. The badger engraving seemed to move, looking directly at them. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the cup dissolved into golden mist that floated toward Harry and Hermione, swirling around them briefly before dissipating. Whoa! Ron exclaimed, now seeing the golden mist. What was that? I'm not sure, Hermione said, her voice strained. But I think we need to see Professor Dumbledore. Right away. An echo, Dumbledore explained an hour later in his office, stroking his long beard thoughtfully. A magical afterimage of the destroyed Horcrux, drawn to the force that destroyed it. Harry and Hermione sat across from his desk, having just described their strange breakfast experience. Ron waited outside. Dumbledore had asked to speak with them privately first. But why now? Hermione asked. The Horcruxes were destroyed months ago. I believe it may be connected to your growing control over the bond, Dumbledore replied. As you learn to direct its energy, you unconsciously call to the remnants of what it has affected. The cup was likely the first to respond because Hufflepuff's magic has always been strongly tied to manifestation and physical presence. Will we see the others too? Harry asked, thinking of the locket, the diadem, the ring from their dreams. I believe so, yes. And there may be other effects as the echoes find you. Dumbledore leaned forward, his blue eyes intense. This is why I wish to begin your instruction immediately. The magic of the aurum vinculum is both ancient and unpredictable. Left untrained, it could attract unwanted attention, not just from the echoes of destroyed Horcruxes, but from darker forces as well. You mean Voldemort, Harry said flatly. Dumbledore nodded gravely. He will sense the disturbances in the magical fabric. He may not understand their cause, but he will be drawn to investigate. Is that why Quirrell fled? Hermione asked. Because he sensed the cup's echo forming? Perhaps, Dumbledore allowed. Though I suspect it has more to do with my increasing scrutiny. Now that his cover is blown, Voldemort will seek another approach. He stood, moving to one of the many silver instruments that whirred and puffed on a nearby table. This one resembled a complex astrolabe, its nested rings spinning independently. For now, we must focus on strengthening your bond and your understanding of it. The echoes of the Horcruxes may provide valuable insights, even assistance, if we are fortunate. Assistance? Harry repeated skeptically. They were pieces of Voldemort's soul. Once, yes. But your magic has purged the darkness from them, leaving only the essence of the objects themselves, objects of great magical and historical significance. Hufflepuff's cup, for instance, was renowned for its ability to purify any liquid placed within it. Ravenclaw's diadem enhanced the wisdom of the wearer. These properties may manifest in some form through the echoes. Hermione straightened, her academic interest clearly piqued. So the echoes might retain some of the original magical properties of the objects, before they were made into Horcruxes? Precisely, Miss Granger. Though how these properties will interact with your bond remains to be seen. Dumbledore returned to his desk. Now, I believe we should begin with the basics of bond magic. Please, take each other's hands. Harry and Hermione complied, the familiar golden glow immediately blooming between them. Excellent, Dumbledore murmured, observing the light with keen interest. Now, I want you both to close your eyes and visualize your magical cores, the center from which your magic flows. For most wizards and witches, this appears as a sphere of light within the chest. Harry closed his eyes, concentrating. At first, he saw nothing but the darkness of his own eyelids. Then, gradually, a sense of inner sight developed. He could see a glowing ball of golden-red energy pulsing in the center of his chest, tendrils of light extending outward, some reaching toward Hermione, others branching throughout his body. I see it, he said softly. It's golden red, like fire. Mine is blue gold, Hermione added. Like sunlight through water. Very good, Dumbledore encouraged. Now, observe the connections between your cores. There should be strands of magic linking them, the physical manifestation of your bond. Harry focused, following the tendrils that reached toward Hermione. As he concentrated, they became more distinct, not single strands but a complex weave of golden threads, pulsing with shared energy. It's beautiful, Hermione whispered. Like a bridge of light. This bridge is the foundation of your bond, Dumbledore explained. Through it, you can share magic, emotions, even knowledge at times. The stronger and more stable the bridge becomes, the more easily energy can flow between you. For the next hour, Dumbledore guided them through basic exercises, strengthening the connection, controlling the flow of energy, maintaining awareness of each other even when physically separated. By the end, they could sustain the golden glow without physical contact, though it was weaker than when they touched. You are progressing remarkably quickly, Dumbledore observed as they prepared to leave. Most bonded pairs take months to achieve what you've managed in a single session. Is that good or bad? Harry asked, sensing a note of concern beneath the headmaster's praise. It is neither, intrinsically. But it does suggest your bond is unusually powerful, which makes proper control all the more important. Dumbledore's expression grew serious. I must ask that you practice only the exercises I have shown you, at least for now. Bond magic can be volatile when pushed too far, too fast. We understand, Professor, Hermione assured him. We'll be careful. One more thing before you go, Dumbledore added. The echoes you experienced this morning, they may become more frequent as your control increases. Should any appear, do not attempt to interact with them beyond simple observation. Make note of their appearance and behavior, then inform me immediately. Harry and Hermione nodded, though Harry couldn't help feeling there was something Dumbledore wasn't telling them about the echoes, something important. Over the next few weeks, life at Hogwarts settled into a new, tense rhythm. Students moved through the castle in supervised groups, the grounds remained off-limits, and rumors about Quirrell's disappearance grew increasingly wild. The official story, that he had suffered a breakdown and was receiving treatment at St. Mungo's, satisfied most, but Harry, Ron, and Hermione knew better. Their daily routine now included bond practice sessions, usually in an empty classroom provided by Dumbledore. Ron often joined them, alternating between genuine interest and mild boredom as they worked through increasingly complex exercises. Can you do anything cool yet? He asked one afternoon, spinning idly in a chair as Harry and Hermione sat cross-legged on cushions, golden light flowing between them. Like, I don't know, shoot lightning or read minds. It doesn't work like that, Hermione said without opening her eyes. We're learning control and stability, not flashy spells. Could have fooled me, Ron muttered, gesturing to the golden aura surrounding them, now bright enough to cast shadows on the walls. In truth, they were progressing beyond basic control exercises. Under Dumbledore's guidance, they had begun exploring the unique capabilities of their bond. They could now share simple sensory experiences. Hermione could see through Harry's eyes briefly, or Harry could feel the pages of a book beneath Hermione's fingers. They could amplify each other's spell work, one casting while the other channeled additional power through the bond. And, most remarkably to Harry, they could communicate without words, not complete thoughts yet, but emotions and simple impressions that grew clearer with practice. The Horcrux echoes continued to appear sporadically. After Hufflepuff's cup came Slytherin's locket, materializing one evening in the Gryffindor common room, its serpentine-esque glinting in the firelight before dissolving into mist that spiraled around them. Then Ravenclaw's diadem, which formed above Hermione's head during transfiguration, causing Professor McGonagall to drop her wand in shock when the ethereal tiara briefly crowned Hermione before dissipating. Each echo left them with a strange sense of connection to the founders, fleeting impressions of personalities, magical signatures, even fragments of memories that weren't their own. "It's like they're trying to tell us something," Hermione mused after the diadem's appearance. "Or show us something about themselves." Dumbledore said the echoes might retain some of their original properties, Harry reminded her. "Maybe they're trying to share their knowledge." Their schoolwork continued to improve dramatically, their combined magical strength making even complex spells manageable. In charms, they managed to levitate all the desks in the classroom simultaneously, a feat that had Professor Flitwick squeaking with excitement for days. But not everyone viewed their growing abilities with enthusiasm. During potions, Snape watched them with increasingly suspicious eyes as they produced perfect brews with seemingly minimal effort. "Perhaps, Mr. Potter," he said icily one day as their forgetfulness potion turned the exact shade of blue described in the textbook, "you would care to demonstrate your sudden expertise by preparing the next step without consulting Miss Granger or your book." Before Harry could panic, he felt a gentle pulse through the bond, Hermione sending him the knowledge. Without hesitation, he added precisely 3 drops of Lethe River water, stirred twice counterclockwise, then once clockwise. Snape's eyes narrowed dangerously. "What is this?" he hissed, leaning closer. "Some form of cheating charm?" 20 points from Gryffindor for, "It is not cheating, Severus," Professor McGonagall's voice interrupted from the doorway, where she had apparently been observing. "As you well know. May I speak with you outside for a moment?" The class watched in stunned silence as Snape followed McGonagall into the corridor, his face a mask of barely controlled anger. "What was that about?" Ron whispered when they'd gone. "I think McGonagall's going to explain about the bond," Hermione whispered back. Dumbledore said the teachers would need to be informed eventually. When Snape returned, his expression was still sour, but he said nothing further about cheating. Instead, he assigned them an additional 6 inches on their essay about forgetfulness potions and stalked back to his desk. "I think he's jealous," Ron said later as they walked to herbology. Imagine Snape at school, greasy and bitter, watching James Potter get all the glory. Now he's watching Harry get special powers and special lessons with Dumbledore. Must really burn him up. "Ron!" Hermione scolded, but Harry caught a hint of amusement through their bond. She wasn't entirely disapproving of Ron's assessment. Their bond faced its first significant test in late February when Harry fell from his broom during an unauthorized nighttime flying session. Despite the ban on outdoor activities, he had snuck out to clear his head after a particularly vivid dream about Voldemort. One moment he was soaring above the Quidditch pitch, the next his broom gave a violent jerk and he was tumbling through the air. He hit the ground hard, pain exploding through his left leg as the bone snapped. In Gryffindor Tower, Hermione jerked awake with a cry, clutching her own left leg. Without thinking, she ran from the dormitory in her nightgown, following the pull of the bond through the castle and out onto the grounds. She found Harry lying on the Quidditch pitch, pale and sweating, his leg bent at an unnatural angle. "Harry," she gasped, dropping to her knees beside him. "What happened?" I felt your leg break." "Broom," he managed through gritted teeth. "Something made it buck. Couldn't hold on." Instinctively, Hermione placed her hands on his injured leg. Golden light flowed from her fingertips, spreading over the break like liquid sunshine. Harry felt the pain begin to recede, the bones shifting subtly beneath her touch. "I don't know how to fix this properly," Hermione said, her voice strained with concentration. "But I can ease the pain until we get you to Madame Pomfrey." The golden light pulsed once more, then faded to a soft glow. Harry found he could now sit up, the pain reduced to a dull throb. "How did you do that?" he asked in amazement. "I'm not sure," she admitted. "I just knew I could help. The bond showed me how to channel healing energy." They were interrupted by a voice from the darkness. "Impressive wandless magic, Miss Granger. 5 points to Gryffindor for quick thinking. And 20 points from Gryffindor for being out of bounds after curfew." Professor McGonagall stepped into view, her tartan dressing gown fluttering in the night breeze. Her stern expression softened slightly as she took in Harry's injury. "I felt the bond magic activate from my quarters," she explained, helping Harry to his feet, or foot, as he could only put weight on his right leg. "Dumbledore has connected several monitoring charms to alert us when you use significant amounts of energy. Now, let's get you to the hospital wing." As they made their way back to the castle, Harry leaning heavily on both of them, McGonagall added more quietly, "You should know, Potter, that the wards recorded a disruptive spell cast at your broom. Someone tried to harm you tonight." Harry and Hermione exchanged alarmed looks. "Quirrell?" Harry suggested. McGonagall's lips thinned. "The spell signature was not familiar to our wards. Which means it was cast by someone, or something, not currently recognized as belonging to Hogwarts." The implication hung heavy in the air. Voldemort had found a new vessel, or a new method of attacking from a distance. In the hospital wing, Madame Pomfrey mended Harry's broken leg in seconds, though she insisted he stay overnight for observation. As McGonagall left to report the incident to Dumbledore, Hermione lingered at Harry's bedside. "I'm not leaving you alone tonight," she declared, pulling a chair close to his bed. "Not after someone just tried to kill you." Harry didn't argue. The truth was, he didn't want to be alone either. The attack had shaken him more than he wanted to admit, not just the fall, but the violation of what he'd always considered his safe space. Flying had been his refuge, the one place he felt completely free. Now even that had been tainted. "I should have known better than to go out alone," he said quietly. "Especially after all of Dumbledore's warnings." Hermione took his hand, the bond warming between them. "You couldn't have known someone would attack your broom. But from now on, we stick together, all right? All three of us. No more solo adventures." Harry nodded, squeezing her hand gratefully. "Did you really feel my leg break? Through the bond?" "Yes," she said, rubbing her own leg absently. "It woke me up, a sharp pain, then this, pulling sensation, leading me to you. I didn't even think about it, I just knew I had to get to you." "And the healing magic? Dumbledore hasn't taught us anything like that yet." Hermione's brow furrowed. "I know. It just happened. Like the knowledge was already there, just waiting for me to need it." She hesitated. "Harry, I think it might have come from Hufflepuff's cup. Since its echo found us, I've had these impressions. Knowledge about healing magic that I know I never learned. The echoes are sharing their abilities with us," Harry realized. "Just like Dumbledore suggested they might. But why? What do they want from us?" Before Harry could respond, a shimmer of silvery light appeared at the foot of his bed. It coalesced into the translucent form of a ring, a large, cracked stone set in an ornate gold band. "The ring," Harry whispered. "The gaunt ring from our dreams." The ethereal ring hovered for a moment, then began to spin slowly. As it rotated, the crack in the stone sealed, the surface becoming smooth and unmarked. A symbol appeared, etched into the stone's surface, a triangle containing a circle, bisected by a line. "I know that symbol," Hermione said softly. I've seen it before, in a book, something about ancient magical artifacts. The ring continued to spin, faster now, throwing off sparks of silver light. Then it shot forward, directly at Harry's chest. He gasped as it passed through him, a cold sensation flooding his body momentarily before warming into something like resolve, a strengthening of purpose, of determination. When it had gone, Harry found he could stand without pain, his leg completely healed. That wasn't supposed to happen for hours, Hermione said, eyes wide. Madame Pomfrey said the bones needed time to strengthen. Harry took a few experimental steps. His leg felt better than before it had broken, stronger, somehow more connected to his magic. I think the ring just gave me something, he said slowly. Not just healing, but resilience. Like it's reinforced my body against physical damage. Hermione looked troubled. Harry, we should tell Dumbledore about this right away. He specifically said not to interact with the echoes. I didn't exactly have a choice, Harry pointed out. It flew into me before I could do anything. Just then, the hospital wing doors opened, and Dumbledore entered, his expression grave. One look at Harry standing beside the bed, and his eyebrows rose toward his hairline. It would seem I've missed something significant, he said mildly. The resurrection stone, Dumbledore explained the next morning in his office, turning a heavy, ancient-looking book toward them. On the open page was an illustration of a ring identical to the one they'd seen, complete with the triangle circle line symbol. One of the 3 Deathly Hallows, according to wizarding legend. The what? Harry asked, while beside him, Hermione gasped in recognition. The Deathly Hallows, from The Tale of the 3 Brothers, she exclaimed. I read about them in Magical Myths and Their Origins. Dumbledore smiled approvingly. Indeed, Miss Granger. Though most consider them merely legend, the Hallows have a basis in historical fact. The resurrection stone was said to have the power to recall shades of the dead from beyond the veil, not truly bringing them back to life, but creating a kind of echo. Harry frowned, thinking of the echoes they'd been experiencing. Like the Horcrux echoes? Similar in some ways, though fundamentally different in nature. The stone's power was to connect the living and the dead, to bridge worlds, in a sense. And Voldemort made it into a Horcrux, Hermione said, connecting the dots. But why would its echo heal Harry's leg and give him, what did you call it, Harry? Resilience, Harry supplied. Like it reinforced my body somehow. Dumbledore stroked his beard thoughtfully. The stone's original purpose was twisted by Voldemort's dark magic, but your bond purged that darkness when it destroyed the Horcrux. What remains is the stone's essential nature, to strengthen connections between worlds, between states of being. In this case, I believe it has strengthened the connection between your magic and your physical form, Harry. Is that safe? Hermione asked worriedly. I believe so, yes. Though the manner in which it occurred is concerning. Dumbledore's expression grew more serious. The echoes appear to be acting with increasing autonomy, and purpose. They are not merely finding you now, they are actively attempting to assist you. But why? Harry pressed. What do they want? Dumbledore was silent for a long moment, his blue eyes distant as if seeing something far away. Finally, he sighed. I believe they sense what is coming. The magic of the Founders was deeply intertwined with Hogwarts itself, with its protection and preservation. If the castle or its inhabitants are threatened. You think they're preparing us, Hermione realized. For Voldemort's return. That would be my assessment, yes. Dumbledore adjusted his half-moon spectacles. Which makes our work all the more urgent. Today, we will move beyond basic control exercises to more practical applications of your bond. For the next several hours, Dumbledore guided them through increasingly complex magical exercises. They learned to create a shared shield charm that could repel even the headmaster's strongest hexes. They practiced amplifying each other's offensive spells, turning Harry's moderately powerful Expelliarmus into a blast that shattered a practice dummy. They worked on extending their magical awareness through the bond, sensing potential threats beyond normal perception. By the end, they were exhausted but exhilarated, their control over the bond greater than ever. "You have both made remarkable progress," Dumbledore told them as they prepared to leave. "But I must caution you again about overexertion. The bond draws on your own magical reserves, it does not create energy from nothing. Push too hard, and you risk magical exhaustion." "We'll be careful, Professor," Hermione promised, though Harry could sense her excitement through the bond. They were learning to do things that even seventh years couldn't manage. As they reached the door, Dumbledore called after them. "One more thing. I believe it would be prudent to include Mr. Weasley in more aspects of your training. His perspective may prove valuable, and his friendship provides a necessary balance to your bond." Harry and Hermione exchanged surprised looks. They hadn't realized Dumbledore had noticed Ron's occasional feelings of exclusion. "We'd like that," Harry agreed. "Ron's been brilliant about all of this." "Excellent. Please bring him to our next session." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. "I believe he may have talents that will complement your own in unexpected ways." March arrived with howling winds and pelting rain that rattled the castle windows. Despite the continuing security measures, life at Hogwarts had settled into a tense normalcy. There had been no further attacks or sightings of Quirrell, though rumors placed him everywhere from Albania to the Department of Mysteries. Ron had indeed joined their training sessions, proving surprisingly adept at strategic applications of bond magic. Where Harry and Hermione sometimes lost themselves in the power and possibilities of their connection, Ron kept them grounded with practical questions and observations. "You two are thinking too complicated," he'd say. "Why not just use the bond to enhance a simple leglocker curse instead of trying to invent some fancy new spell? Simpler is usually better in a fight." Even Dumbledore seemed impressed by Ron's tactical mind. "Mr. Weasley has a point," he'd agreed after one such suggestion. "In combat, reliability often trumps innovation." The Horcrux echoes have become more frequent, appearing almost daily now. After the ring came fragments of memories, Tom Riddle opening the Chamber of Secrets, a young woman hiding the diadem in the Room of Requirement, Helga Hufflepuff enchanting her cup with healing properties. Each echo left them with new insights, new abilities that seemed to integrate seamlessly with their magic. From Hufflepuff's cup, Hermione gained an intuitive understanding of healing magic that surpassed anything in the first-year curriculum. From Ravenclaw's diadem, they both experienced sudden leaps in magical theory comprehension, grasping concepts that should have been beyond them for years. From Slytherin's locket came an unexpected gift, Parseltongue, the ability to speak to serpents, which manifested in both Harry and Hermione during a chance encounter with a garden snake in herbology. Professor Sprout had nearly fainted when they began hissing at the small reptile, carrying on what appeared to be a complex conversation before Harry gently relocated it outside the greenhouse. "It just made sense suddenly," Hermione had tried to explain later to Dumbledore. "Like learning a new language, except I didn't have to study it." The headmaster had looked deeply troubled by this development, though he wouldn't explain why. Now, as they sat in the library researching defensive spells for their next training session, Harry noticed Hermione staring intently at a blank space on the wall. "Do you see something?" he asked quietly. She nodded, not taking her eyes off the spot. "It's forming slowly this time. I think it's a new echo." Harry focused his perception through the bond, seeing what Hermione saw. A faint outline was indeed taking shape, long and thin, with a distinctive handle. A sword, materializing from nothing, its blade etched with intricate runes. "Gryffindor's sword," Ron breathed, following their gaze. After weeks of exposure to the bond's energy, he had begun to develop a limited ability to perceive the echoes himself. "My dad told me about it. Supposedly it appears to true Gryffindors in times of need." The ethereal sword continued to take form, gaining definition and a faint ruby glow. Unlike the previous echoes, it didn't immediately rush toward them or dissolve into mist. It simply hung in the air, as if waiting. "What's it doing?" Ron whispered. I'm not sure, Harry replied, rising slowly from his chair. It feels different from the others. Acting on instinct, he extended his hand toward the sword. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ghostly weapon moved, floating until its hilt aligned with Harry's outstretched fingers. Harry, wait, Hermione started, but it was too late. As his fingers closed around the hilt, the sword suddenly solidified, its weight dropping into his hand with surprising heft. No longer translucent, it gleamed solid and real in the library light, rubies in its hilt catching and reflecting the afternoon sun. Bloody hell, Ron gasped. It's actually real. Madame Pants appeared around a bookshelf, drawn by Ron's exclamation. What is the meaning of this NOI? She broke off, eyes widening at the sight of the sword in Harry's hand. Is that, where did you, put that weapon down this instant? I think, Harry said carefully, lowering the sword to the table, we need to get Dumbledore. Remarkable, Dumbledore murmured, examining the sword carefully in his office. Truly remarkable. It's really Gryffindor's sword? Hermione asked. Not just an echo like the others. Oh, it is quite real, Dumbledore confirmed. Though how it came to appear to you is most unusual. The sword traditionally comes only to a true Gryffindor in a moment of great need. Well, Harry's definitely a true Gryffindor, Ron pointed out. But we weren't in any danger in the library. Unless you count Madame Pants's glare. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled briefly before growing serious again. I believe this represents a significant escalation. The echoes are no longer simply sharing knowledge or enhancing your existing abilities, they are providing you with tangible magical artifacts. But the sword wasn't a Horcrux, was it? Harry asked, confused. We didn't see it in any of the memories. No, it was not, Dumbledore agreed. Which suggests the scope of influence has expanded beyond the destroyed Horcruxes to include other objects connected to the Founders. The magic of your bond appears to be resonating with Hogwarts itself, calling forth tools it deems necessary for your protection. Hermione's brow furrowed. You make it sound almost sentient. Magic of this nature often develops a kind of purpose or intent, if not true sentience, Dumbledore explained. Particularly when it interacts with objects of great magical significance over long periods. Harry looked down at the sword, its blade catching the light from Dumbledore's windows. So what do we do with it? For now, I believe it should remain here in my office, Dumbledore decided. Though I suspect it will find its way back to you should you truly need it. After carefully placing the sword in a glass case behind his desk, Dumbledore turned back to them, his expression grave. There is another matter we must discuss. I have received intelligence suggesting that Professor Quirrell has been sighted in the Forbidden Forest. All three straightened, suddenly alert. He's back? Harry asked. Here at Hogwarts? It would appear so, though he has not attempted to enter the castle. Dumbledore folded his hands on his desk. The centaurs reported a two-faced man speaking with the creatures of the forest, seeking allies. He's building an army, Ron said, his strategic mind immediately grasping the implications. Perhaps not an army, but certainly gathering support, Dumbledore allowed. Which suggests he is planning something significant, something that would require more than his own magic to accomplish. The stone, Hermione said immediately. He's still after the Philosopher's Stone. That remains the most likely target, yes. Dumbledore's gaze moved to the window, where the Forbidden Forest stretched dark and forbidding in the distance. The stone has been moved from its previous location to one even more secure. But we must assume Voldemort knows this and is adapting his plans accordingly. What do you want us to do? Harry asked, determination flowing through him, both his own and Hermione's, amplified by their bond. Dumbledore regarded them thoughtfully. Continue your training. Master the abilities the echoes have granted you. And be vigilant, particularly as we approach the end of the school year. Why then specifically? Hermione asked, ever attentive to details. Patterns, Miss Granger. Voldemort has always had a flair for the dramatic, for symbolic timing. The end of the school year would represent both a practical opportunity, with many staff departing, and a symbolic closing of a circle from his own school days. Dumbledore's expression darkened. And it would strike at the heart of what he has always envied most, the sense of Hogwarts as a home, a safe haven, which he himself lost upon leaving these walls. The implication hung heavily in the air. Voldemort wouldn't just try to steal the stone, he would try to corrupt what Hogwarts represented in the process. "We'll be ready," Harry promised, feeling the bond pulse with shared resolve. "I believe you will," Dumbledore said quietly. "More ready than even I had dared hope." April brought scattered sunshine and the first tentative shoots of spring to the Hogwarts grounds. With the improved weather came a cautious relaxation of security measures, supervised outdoor activities resumed, though the forest remained strictly off-limits, with additional protective enchantments reinforcing the boundary. Harry, Hermione, and Ron spent every free moment training, their abilities growing exponentially. The bond between Harry and Hermione had stabilized into a constant, comfortable connection that they could modulate at will, strengthening it for combined spellcasting or dimming it for privacy when needed. Ron had found his own niche within their unusual trio. Though not directly connected to the bond, his proximity to it had begun to affect his magic in subtle ways. His tactical instincts had sharpened to an almost precognitive level, allowing him to anticipate spell trajectories and counterattacks with uncanny accuracy. "It's like wizard chess," he explained when Dumbledore commented on this development. "I can see the patterns, the possible moves before they happen." More Horcrux echoes had appeared, each bringing new insights or abilities. Most disturbing was the echo of Nagini, Voldemort's snake, which had manifested as a serpentine mist that whispered dark secrets in Parseltongue before dissolving into Harry's scar, leaving him with fragmented glimpses of Voldemort's plans. "He's growing stronger," Harry reported after one such episode. "Drinking unicorn blood in the forest to sustain his spirit. But it's not enough, he needs the stone soon, or he'll lose what little corporeality he's gained." Their classmates had begun to notice the changes in them as well. Neville watched with wide-eyed wonder as Harry transfigured a match not just into a needle but into an intricately decorated silver thimble during McGonagall's class. Seamus and Dean whispered in a common room as Hermione casually conjured bluebell flames in different colors, shaping them into miniature animals that danced across the table. Even the Slytherins had grown wary. Draco Malfoy, who had spent much of the year taunting Harry, now kept his distance, eyeing the trio with a mixture of suspicion and reluctant respect after witnessing Harry shield all three of them from an exploding cauldron in potions with a wandless Protego. "Potter's different," they overheard him telling Crabbe and Goyle one day. "Father says there's something happening at Hogwarts, something to do with old magic waking up. Says we should watch and wait." The teachers, meanwhile, had adapted to their accelerated abilities with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Flitwick created special advanced assignments for them, practically bouncing with excitement when they mastered spells from the third-year curriculum. McGonagall maintained her stern demeanor but occasionally allowed a proud smile when they demonstrated particularly precise transfigurations. Snape alone remained coldly skeptical, though even he had ceased his active antagonism, settling for ignoring their achievements rather than belittling them. It was during an afternoon training session in late April that everything changed. They were in the Room of Requirement, a remarkable chamber Dumbledore had introduced them to, which transformed itself to meet their needs. Today it had configured itself as a spacious dueling area, with practice dummies and various obstacles for tactical exercises. Dumbledore was guiding Harry and Hermione through a particularly complex form of shared magic, trying to maintain individual spells while still drawing on their combined power. "The key is to visualize separate channels within the bond," the headmaster explained. "Like tributaries branching from a main river, each carrying a portion of the flow." Harry concentrated, feeling the familiar golden warmth flowing between them. With careful mental effort, he visualized the energy dividing, part continuing to Hermione while another stream remained with him. On Dumbledore's signal, they both cast, Harry sending an Expelliarmus at one practice dummy while Hermione simultaneously levitated another. The red bolt from Harry's wand struck with such force that it not only disarmed the dummy but blasted it backward into the wall. Simultaneously, Hermione's target rose so swiftly that it hit the ceiling before she could adjust her control. Excellent progress, Dumbledore approved. Though perhaps with slightly more moderation next time. Ron, who had been practicing shield charms nearby, lowered his wand with a grin. At this rate, you know who won't know what hit him. The words had barely left his mouth when Harry gasped, clutching his scar. Pain lanced through his forehead, white-hot and searing, worse than he'd ever felt before. Through the bond, Hermione experienced an echo of the agony, dropping to her knees beside him. "Harry," she cried, grabbing his shoulders to steady him. Images flashed through his mind, the forest at night, silvery unicorn blood dripping from hooded lips, a plan forming with terrible clarity. He could feel Voldemort's emotions as if they were his own, hunger, rage, and a savage, desperate triumph. "He knows," Harry gasped, the words tearing from his throat. "He knows about us, about the bond." Someone told him. Who? Ron demanded, kneeling beside them. Who would tell him? But Harry shook his head, the connection already fading. "I don't know. But he's coming, tonight. He's found another way into the castle." Dumbledore was already moving, his wand raised. The wards give no indication of a breach, but they may not detect Voldemort in his current state. He waved his wand in a complex pattern, sending forth a silvery phoenix patronus. "Alert the staff," he instructed the spectral bird. "Security protocol Merlin's crown. This is not a drill." As the patronus soared through the wall, Dumbledore turned back to the trio. "You three will return to Gryffindor Tower immediately and remain there under the protection of the Fat Lady. I have enhanced her portrait with additional enchantments for just such an emergency." "But sir," Harry protested, pushing himself to his feet with Hermione's help, "we've been training for this. We can help." "Your training, while impressive, has been compressed into months rather than the years it would typically require," Dumbledore replied firmly. "You are not ready to face Voldemort directly, regardless of the bond's power. We destroyed his Horcruxes," Hermione pointed out. "Our magic affects him in ways others can't." Dumbledore hesitated, conflict evident in his ancient features. "That may be true, Miss Granger, but the risk," he was interrupted by a distant, reverberating boom that shook dust from the ceiling. Then another, closer this time. "Something's attacking the castle," Ron said, turning toward the door. Dumbledore's expression hardened. "Go to Gryffindor Tower," he ordered again. "Now. The staff will handle this." Before they could argue further, he swept from the room, his robes billowing behind him with unexpected speed for a man of his age. The door closed firmly behind him. The three exchanged looks. "We're not actually going to Gryffindor Tower, are we?" Ron asked, already knowing the answer. "Of course not," Harry replied, the bond thrumming with shared determination between him and Hermione. "Whatever's happening, we're part of it. We need to find out where Voldemort is entering the castle." Hermione closed her eyes, focusing on the connection to Harry's scar, the inadvertent link to Voldemort that had been growing clearer since the Nagini echo. "I'm getting something about water. And pipes." The bathroom, Harry realized with sudden clarity. Moaning Myrtle's bathroom, where the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets is located. Ron's eyes widened. "How do you know that?" "The echoes showed us," Hermione explained quickly. "Tom Riddle opening the chamber 50 years ago. It's in the second-floor girls' bathroom." "But the chamber was just a legend," Ron protested. "Dad said," another boom interrupted him, this one close enough to make the floor vibrate beneath their feet. "Legend or not, something's happening," Harry said grimly. "And I think Voldemort's found another way to use the chamber, maybe another entrance that leads closer to where the stone is hidden." "The chamber was Slytherin's secret," Hermione added, connecting the dots rapidly. "If Voldemort found a way to access the Founder's magic like we did." Then he might be able to use the chamber to bypass Dumbledore's protections, Harry finished. Ron squared his shoulders. Right then. Second floor girls' bathroom it is. They raced from the room of requirement, the sounds of commotion growing louder as they descended through the castle. In the distance, they could hear professors shouting spells, the distinctive crack of magical combat echoing through the corridors. "They're fighting something on the grounds," Hermione said as they passed a window overlooking the lake. Dark shapes moved near the forest edge, too distant to identify clearly, but numerous. A diversion, Harry realized. Whatever's out there is meant to draw the teachers away while Voldemort sneaks in through the chamber. They reached the second floor to find it eerily deserted, the usual sounds of the castle muffled here as if something was dampening the noise. Outside Moaning Myrtle's bathroom, they paused. "We need a plan," Hermione whispered. "We can't just burst in." Harry nodded, feeling the bond between them strengthening as they synchronized their thoughts. "Ron, you're our tactical expert. What do you suggest?" Ron considered for a moment, his brow furrowed in concentration. "We need to know what's in there first. Can you two use the bond to sense through the door somehow?" Hermione's eyes lit up. "We could try extending our magical awareness like Dumbledore taught us. It might work through physical barriers if we concentrate." Taking each other's hands, Harry and Hermione closed their eyes, focusing on the golden connection between them. With careful intent, they pushed their combined awareness outward, extending invisible tendrils of magic through the bathroom door. Images began to form in their shared perception: sinks, stalls, the ghostly form of Moaning Myrtle hovering anxiously in a corner. And there, standing before the central sink, a tall figure in a turban. "Quirrell," Harry whispered. "He's alone, or seems to be." "What's he doing?" Ron asked. Looking at the sink, "No, at a small snake carved into the faucet," Hermione reported, her eyes still closed. He's speaking Parseltongue." As if in response to her words, they heard a low grinding sound from within the bathroom, stone moving against stone. Then Quirrell's voice, no stutter now, speaking in English: "Master, the way is open." "We need to stop him before he gets into the chamber," Harry said urgently, opening his eyes. "Once he's down there, we might not be able to follow." "All right," Ron said, taking charge with newfound confidence. "Here's what we do. I'll create a diversion. Hermione's taught me that bluebell flame trick. I'll send some in from the far side of the bathroom to distract him. Meanwhile, you two hit him with your most powerful stunning spell through the bond. Even you know who won't be expecting that kind of magical punch from first years." It was a good plan, simple but potentially effective. They moved into position, Ron circling around to approach from the other entrance while Harry and Hermione prepared their combined stunning spell, the golden light already glowing intensely between their joined hands. At Ron's signal, a small shower of blue flames arcing through the far doorway, they burst in, wands raised in perfect unison. "Stupefy," they shouted together, the force of the bond behind their spell. Twin jets of red light, far larger and brighter than a normal stunning spell, shot toward Quirrell's back. But at the last second, he spun around with inhuman speed, his eyes glowing red in a face that was no longer entirely his own. "Protego," he snarled, his voice layered with another, higher tone beneath it. A shield charm materialized, but the combined stunning spell shattered it like glass, striking Quirrell in the chest and sending him flying backward into the now open entrance to the chamber, a large, dark pipe exposed where the central sink had been. He teetered on the edge for a moment, his red eyes widening in shock. Then, instead of falling, he laughed, a chilling sound that belonged to Voldemort rather than Quirrell. "Potter," he hissed. "And the mud blood. How convenient that you should deliver yourselves to me." With a flick of his wand, faster than they could react, Quirrell sent a blast of purple light toward the ceiling. Stone cracked and began to fall, not on them, but blocking their exit from the bathroom. "Follow if you dare," he taunted, and then he was gone, jumping willingly into the dark pipe that led to the Chamber of Secrets. Ron scrambled over the fallen debris to join them, his wand still emitting blue flames. "Are you two all right?" "Fine," Harry confirmed, though his scar was burning fiercely. "But we're trapped in here, and Quirrell's heading down to the chamber. What do we do?" Ron asked, eyeing the dark opening warily. "Follow him down there." Hermione bit her lip, thinking rapidly. If Voldemort's using the chamber to access wherever the stone is hidden now, we need to alert Dumbledore. But we can't get out this way. Harry stepped toward the pipe, feeling a strange pull, not from his scar this time, but from something deeper, more fundamental. I think we're meant to go down there." "Meant to?" Ron repeated skeptically. "By who?" "By the Founders," Hermione realized, feeling the same pull through their bond. "Or by Hogwarts itself. Remember what Dumbledore said, our bond is resonating with the castle's magic." As if confirming her words, a soft golden glow began to emanate from the pipe entrance, illuminating the darkness within. From somewhere far below, they heard a phoenix's cry, hauntingly beautiful and unmistakably a call. "Fawkes," Harry said, recognizing Dumbledore's phoenix. "He's down there." Ron looked between them and the pipe, then squared his shoulders. "Well, if we're going to face you-know-who, at least we've got the castle on our side." He managed a weak grin. "Ladies first." Hermione rolled her eyes, but stepped forward with determination, taking Harry's hand. "Together," she insisted. With their free hands, they each grabbed one of Ron's arms. And as one, they jumped into the darkness. The pipe was like a giant, slimy slide, twisting and turning as it carried them deep beneath the castle. Just when it seemed they might fall forever, the pipe leveled out, depositing them onto a damp stone floor littered with small animal bones. "Lumos," Hermione whispered, her wand tip igniting to illuminate a rough stone tunnel stretching ahead. "This is the Chamber of Secrets?" Ron asked, looking around doubtfully. "Just the entrance," Harry corrected, helping him to his feet. "The chamber itself should be further in." They moved forward cautiously, the tunnel curving and bending as they followed it deeper beneath the school. The air grew colder, danker, with an unpleasant smell of decay and something else, something reptilian. "There was a monster," Hermione whispered, recalling the echo memories. "A basilisk. Slytherin's pet, controlled by his heirs." "A what?" Ron asked, alarmed. "Giant snake that kills with its gaze," Harry explained tersely. "But it should be dormant without a parcel mouth to wake it, and Voldemort wouldn't have time to rouse it if he's after the stone." They rounded another bend and found themselves facing a solid wall on which two entwined serpents were carved, their eyes set with glinting emeralds. "This is it," Harry said. "The entrance to the chamber itself." Acting on instinct, he focused on the carved snakes, calling forth the Parseltongue ability the echoes had granted him. "Open," he hissed in the serpent language. The serpents parted as the wall cracked open, the halves sliding out of sight to reveal a long, dimly lit chamber. Towering stone pillars carved with more serpents rose to support a ceiling lost in darkness. At the far end, beneath a giant stone face of what must be Salazar Slytherin himself, stood Quirrell. He was no longer alone. Floating before him was the ghostly, translucent form of Tom Riddle, not quite solid, but more substantial than a normal ghost. Between them hovered a familiar object, the Philosopher's Stone, glowing with ruby light. "Ah, our guests have arrived," Quirrell said, turning to face them. His voice was steady now, without a hint of the stutter he'd affected all year. "My master thought you might follow." The ghostly Riddle, a younger version of Voldemort, studied them with cold interest. "So these are the children who destroyed my Horcruxes. Impressive, for one so young. How are there two of you?" Ron blurted, unable to contain his confusion. Riddle smiled, a charming smile that didn't reach his eyes. "An excellent question. You see, while my future self has been sustaining himself through Quirrell, I have been, reconstituting myself from the residual energies of my destroyed Horcruxes. Their destruction did not annihilate their power completely, it merely released it. And you've been absorbing it, Hermione realized, horror dawning on her face. That's why the echoes have been appearing to us, they were trying to warn us that the energy was being corrupted again. Precisely, Miss Granger. Though not corrupted, reclaimed. Riddle circled the stone, his ghostly fingers almost but not quite touching it. With each echo that appeared to you, a portion of that power returned to me instead. And now, with the Philosopher's Stone, I shall complete my restoration, while my future self regains a proper body. Harry's mind raced. The echoes hadn't just been helping them, they'd been trying to transfer their power before Voldemort could reclaim it. A race that they were now losing. It won't work, he said, playing for time while trying to formulate a plan through the bond with Hermione. Dumbledore will have realized what's happening by now. He'll be on his way. Dumbledore, sneered Quirrell, is currently battling an assortment of forest creatures I've bound to my will. By the time he realizes this was merely a diversion, it will be too late. Harry felt Hermione's thought flow through the bond, a plan forming rapidly in her analytical mind. They needed to separate Quirrell from Riddle, disrupt the connection between them before they could use the stone. Ron, seeming to sense the silent communication, shifted slightly to one side, drawing attention to himself. If you're so powerful, he challenged, why hide behind Quirrell all year? Why not just take the stone months ago? It was a deliberate provocation, and it worked. Riddle's ghostly features darkened with anger. You dare question Lord Voldemort's methods, boy. I have planned this with precision that your simple mind could never comprehend. While Riddle was distracted by Ron, Harry and Hermione began to channel their magic through the bond, building it slowly to avoid detection. The golden glow remained contained beneath their skin, visible only to each other through their connection. And yet, Ron continued, showing remarkable courage, you're still just a ghost. And your future self is stuck on the back of Quirrell's head like some kind of magical parasite. Not exactly the greatest dark wizard of all time, are you? Quirrell's face contorted with rage, his master's emotion bleeding through. Enough. Crucio. Ron dove sideways with surprising agility, the tactical awareness he developed allowing him to anticipate the attack a split second before it came. The unforgivable curse struck a pillar behind him, leaving a smoking scorch mark. That was all the distraction Harry and Hermione needed. With a shared thought, they released the built-up energy of their bond, not as a conventional spell but as a pure wave of the golden light, the same energy that had destroyed the Horcruxes. It surged across the chamber, striking both Quirrell and the ghostly Riddle simultaneously. Quirrell screamed, falling to his knees as the light engulfed him. But Riddle reacted differently. Instead of being repelled, he seemed to absorb the energy, his translucent form becoming more solid. Yes, he cried, his voice stronger now. More power, just what I needed. To their horror, the plan had backfired. The bond energy that had destroyed the Horcruxes was now feeding Riddle's manifestation, accelerating his restoration. Stop! Harry shouted to Hermione, cutting off the flow of power. But it was too late, Riddle was now almost completely corporeal, hovering inches above the chamber floor. With a casual gesture, he summoned the Philosopher's Stone to his hand. Your bond magic is remarkable, he said, almost conversationally. Dumbledore has trained you well. But he failed to tell you one crucial detail, your power and mine are connected. What destroyed my Horcruxes can also restore me, with the proper application. That's not possible, Hermione insisted. Our magic is based on a positive connection. Yours is rooted in fear and dominance. Magic is magic, Miss Granger. Intent matters less than power. Riddle examined the stone in his now solid hand. And now, with this, both I and my future self shall be fully restored. Quirrell was struggling to his feet, his face twisted in pain but his eyes burning with fanatical devotion. Master, he gasped, let me serve you one last time. Riddle nodded, almost regally. Your loyalty will be remembered, Quirrell. What happened next was too fast to prevent. Quirrell pointed his wand at his own chest and uttered a spell none of them recognized, ancient words that echoed with dark power. His body began to glow from within, not with the golden light of the bond but with a sickly purple radiance. A willing sacrifice, Riddle explained, watching dispassionately as Quirrell convulsed. The final component needed to use the stone's power for restoration rather than mere immortality. Harry, Hermione, and Ron watched in horror as Quirrell's body began to wither, his life force visibly draining into the stone, which glowed brighter with each passing second. Behind Quirrell, a second form was taking shape, a tall, skeletally thin figure with paper-white skin and burning red eyes. Voldemort, the future version, was manifesting physically, drawing on both Quirrell's sacrifice and the stone's power. "We have to destroy the stone," Hermione whispered urgently. "It's the conduit for both of them." "How?" Ron asked desperately. "We can't even touch it." Through the bond, Harry felt a sudden surge of inspiration, not his own, not even Hermione's, but something older, wiser. The Founder's knowledge, accumulated through the echoes, providing one last insight. "The sword," he breathed. "Gryffindor's sword can destroy it." As if summoned by the thought, the air before them shimmered, and the ruby-hilted sword materialized, hanging momentarily before dropping into Harry's outstretched hand. Riddle's eyes widened. "The sword?" "How?" Then understanding dawned. "The Founder's magic. You've been communing with them, just as I have, but they favor you." "Because we're not trying to corrupt their legacy," Harry replied, gripping the sword firmly. "We're trying to protect it." He lunged forward, Hermione moving with him through the bond, their movements perfectly synchronized. Ron, seeing their intent, cast a shield charm to deflect Riddle's hasty attack. "Stop them!" Riddle commanded the half-formed Voldemort, who raised a skeletal hand. Pain exploded in Harry's scar, nearly blinding him, but Hermione's presence in the bond helped him push through it, maintaining their course. Together, they brought the sword down on the Philosopher's Stone still clutched in Riddle's hand. The blade struck with a sound like a thunderclap. The stone shattered, releasing a blinding flash of ruby light that filled the chamber. Riddle's scream of rage mingled with Voldemort's unearthly howl as their source of restoration was destroyed. The light faded gradually, revealing the chamber once more. Quirrell lay motionless on the floor, his body withered to near mummification. Of Riddle and Voldemort, there was no sign, only wisps of black smoke dissipating into the air. Did we do it?" Ron asked shakily, lowering his wand. "Are they gone?" Harry, still holding the sword, shared a look with Hermione through their bond. "Not gone," he said quietly. "But banished, for now. Without a body or the Horcruxes to anchor him, Voldemort is weaker than ever. But he'll try again," Hermione added, her face solemn. "He always does." The sound of Phoenix song filled the chamber, growing louder as Fawkes swooped down from the darkness above. The magnificent bird circled them once before landing on a nearby pillar, regarding them with intelligent eyes. "I think," Ron said, nodding toward the phoenix, "Dumbledore might have figured out where we went." The journey back through the tunnel and up from the chamber was considerably easier with Fawkes's help. The phoenix's tail feathers provided a magical lifeline that carried them upward through the pipe and back into Moaning Myrtle's bathroom, where they found the debris cleared and Dumbledore waiting, his expression a complex mixture of concern, relief, and something that might have been pride. "You disobeyed my direct instruction," he noted mildly as Fawkes settled on his shoulder. "Yes, sir," Harry admitted, still holding Gryffindor's sword. "We did. And in doing so, you may have saved more than just the Philosopher's Stone." Dumbledore gestured for them to follow him. "Come. The rest of the staff has contained the situation on the grounds. We have much to discuss, and you three should visit the hospital wing." As they walked through the now quiet corridors, the headmaster listened intently to their account of what had happened in the chamber, the dual forms of Voldemort, the attempt to use the stone, Quirrell's willing sacrifice. "It is as I feared," Dumbledore said when they had finished. "Voldemort found a way to harness the residual energy of his destroyed Horcruxes, energy that had been manifesting to you as echoes. But we destroyed the stone, Harry pointed out. He can't use it to restore himself now. No, not the stone. But there are other methods he might attempt, now that he has regained even this partial form. Dumbledore's expression was grave. What you faced was not the full power of Lord Voldemort, but rather a shadow, a fragmented version drawing on the remnants of his severed soul pieces. So he's still out there, Hermione said quietly. I fear so, yes. Though thanks to your actions, he has been weakened significantly, pushed back perhaps years in his restoration efforts. They had reached the hospital wing. Before entering, Harry asked the question that had been bothering him since the chamber. Sir, Riddle said our magic and his were connected, that what destroyed his Horcruxes could also restore him. Is that true? Dumbledore was silent for a long moment, weighing his response carefully. There is a connection, yes, though not in the way he believes. Your bond was formed through love, Harry, the same force that protected you as a baby. Voldemort cannot understand this power, but he recognizes its strength and seeks to corrupt it for his own use. What he doesn't realize is that in doing so, he makes himself vulnerable to it in ways he cannot anticipate. So our bond is still a weapon against him, Hermione concluded. Not a tool he can use. Precisely, Miss Granger. Though as you've seen, there are risks in how you deploy that power. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled suddenly. Which is why, I think, your summer studies will need to be particularly thorough. Ron groaned good-naturedly. Summer studies? Can't we have a break after saving the world? Saving the world, Mr. Weasley, is rarely a one-time endeavor, Dumbledore replied with a small smile. But I believe arrangements can be made to ensure it is not all work and no play. He ushered them into the hospital wing, where Madame Pomfrey immediately began fussing over them despite their protests that they were largely unharmed. As she examined the minor cuts and bruises they'd accumulated, Dumbledore drew Harry aside briefly. The sword, he said, nodding to Gryffindor's blade, which Harry still carried. It came to you in the chamber. Harry nodded. Just when we needed it most. The sword presents itself to true Gryffindors in times of need, Dumbledore mused. But it has never done so for one so young. I believe it recognizes in you and Miss Granger the same quality it found in Godric himself, the courage not just to fight, but to love even in the face of darkness. He held out his hand. It should return to safekeeping for now. But I suspect it will find its way back to you should you need it again. Reluctantly, Harry handed over the sword, feeling strangely bereft as it left his grip. Through the bond, Hermione sent a pulse of reassurance, a wordless promise that they would face whatever came next together, with or without legendary weapons. As Dumbledore left with the sword, Ron rejoined them, his arm freshly bandaged. So, he said, dropping onto the bed beside Harry's, reckon we've earned some points for Gryffindor with this one. Despite everything, Harry found himself laughing, a release of tension that quickly spread to the others. Soon all three were chuckling, earning confused looks from Madame Pomfrey as she bustled about the wing. I'd say at least 50, Hermione suggested once she'd caught her breath. 50. We stopped you-know-who for the second time. That's got to be worth at least 100, Ron countered. Plus 10 for Ron's distraction technique, Harry added. And 20 for Harry's sword skills, Ron nodded solemnly. Don't forget 30 for Hermione figuring out it was the chamber in the first place, Harry insisted. As they continued their mock tally, the golden bond between Harry and Hermione pulsed contentedly, warming them both with its gentle glow. Whatever challenges lay ahead, and there would surely be many, they would face them together, their connection growing stronger with each trial overcome. Outside the hospital wing windows, spring sunshine bathed the Hogwarts grounds, washing away the last traces of the night's battle. The castle stood strong and vigilant, its ancient stones humming with renewed magic, the magic of the founders, of friendship, and of a bond formed in a moment of danger and love that had changed everything. Chapter 3, The final confrontation. Summer arrived at the burrow in waves of golden sunshine and the sweet scent of wildflowers. Harry lay on his back in the meadow behind the Weasleys' home, watching clouds drift across the impossibly blue sky. Beside him, Hermione sat cross-legged, a massive tome open in her lap, her brow furrowed in concentration. A few yards away, Ron was attempting to teach Ginny a complicated Quidditch maneuver, their shouts and laughter carrying across the field. Harry closed his eyes, savoring the moment. After the events beneath Hogwarts, Dumbledore had arranged for him to spend the summer with the Weasleys rather than returning to the Dursleys. Hermione joined them for long stretches between visits home to her parents. The arrangement satisfied both the bond's need for proximity and gave them a chance at something they'd all desperately needed, a normal summer. Or as normal as it could be with daily magical training. "You're supposed to be practicing," Hermione said without looking up from her book. Through their bond, Harry felt her gentle amusement. "I am practicing," he replied lazily. "I'm practicing sensing your emotions without looking at you. Right now you're pretending to be annoyed but actually feeling content." A smile tugged at the corner of Hermione's mouth. "Lucky guess." "Not luck. The bond." In the months since school had ended, their connection had stabilized into something deeper and more nuanced. They no longer experienced the random surges of golden light that had characterized its early stages. Instead, the bond had become a constant, comfortable presence, a warm current flowing between them that they could access at will. Daily lessons via enchanted letters from Dumbledore had helped them refine their control. They could now share thoughts and images with increasing clarity, amplify each other's magic with precise modulation, and even extend their magical perception several hundred feet when working together. Ron had continued developing his own unique abilities as well. Though not directly connected to the bond, his prolonged exposure to it had enhanced his natural tactical instincts to an extraordinary degree. He could now predict spell trajectories with uncanny accuracy and formulate complex counter-strategies in seconds. "Dumbledore's letter mentioned something new to try today," Hermione said, marking her place in the book. "Something about magical transference." Harry sat up, immediately interested. "What kind of transference?" "Apparently, in some rare cases, bonded pairs can temporarily transfer specific magical abilities to each other." She pulled a scroll from beside her, unrolling it to reveal Dumbledore's elegant handwriting. "Not just channeling magic through the bond, but actually sharing innate capabilities." "Like what?" "Parseltongue." "Potentially, yes. Or your natural flying ability, or my aptitude for charms." She scanned the instructions. "It requires complete trust and precise visualization. We're supposed to focus on the specific ability we want to share, then guide it across the bond to the other person." Harry shifted to sit across from her, mirroring her cross-legged position. "Should we try it now?" "Might as well. Ron and Ginny are busy." She set the book and scroll aside, extending her hands. "What should we transfer?" Harry took her hands, the bond warming instantly at the contact. "How about your multitasking ability? You can read, take notes, and listen to conversations simultaneously." "I've always been rubbish at that." Hermione laughed. "That's not exactly a magical ability, Harry." "It seems pretty magical to me." "Fair enough. Let's start with something simple, though. How about my ability to perform perfect levitation charms?" Harry nodded. It was a good choice, specific enough to focus on, but not so complex that failure would be discouraging. They closed their eyes, focusing first on strengthening the bond between them. The golden connection brightened in their shared mental space, forming the now familiar bridge of light linking their magical cores. "Now," Hermione instructed softly, "I'm going to visualize my knowledge of the levitation charm, not just the incantation and wand movement, but the feeling of performing it correctly, the way the magic flows." Harry observed through the bond as she concentrated, creating a glowing blue sphere of knowledge that encompassed everything about the charm, her hours of practice, her perfect understanding of the theory, the precise way she channeled her magic through the spell. "I can see it," he murmured. "Good. Now I'm going to guide it across the bond to you. Try to receive it, not just observe, but accept it as if it were your own knowledge. The blue sphere began to move along the golden bridge, approaching Harry's magical core. As it reached him, he focused on opening himself to the knowledge, allowing it to merge with his own magical understanding. There was a moment of disorientation as foreign memories and sensations flowed into him: Hermione's first successful casting of the charm, her methodical refinement of the technique, the unique way she visualized the magic lifting the object rather than just pushing it upward. When they opened their eyes, the transfer complete, Harry felt different, not dramatically so, but as if he'd suddenly remembered something long forgotten. Did it work? Ron called, wandering over with Ginny. You two were glowing again. I'm not sure, Harry admitted, drawing his wand. Let's find out. He pointed at a nearby rock about the size of a quaffle. In previous attempts at the levitation charm, he'd managed to lift objects this size, but with visible effort and somewhat jerky control. Wingardium Leviosa, he incanted, swishing and flicking precisely the way Hermione always did. The rock rose smoothly into the air, holding steady with a stability he'd never achieved before. More than that, Harry found he could manipulate it with subtle shifts in his magical intent rather than broad wand movements, exactly how Hermione performed the charm. Blimey, Ron breathed. You're doing it just like Hermione. It worked, Hermione confirmed, her eyes bright with excitement. You're using my technique, my understanding. Harry experimented further, making the rock trace complex patterns in the air with a precision that had always eluded him. It's not just that I know how you do it, I can feel how you do it. The way you shape your magic, the way you visualize the object's movement. How long does it last? Ginny asked curiously. According to Dumbledore's notes, temporary transference usually lasts a few hours, sometimes a day. Hermione was already scribbling observations in a notebook. But with repeated practice, some aspects might become permanent as Harry's magic adapts to incorporate the knowledge. My turn next, Harry decided, lowering the rock gently to the ground. I want to try sharing my seeker reflexes with you. Hermione looked skeptical. I'm not sure physical attributes can be transferred. The note specifically mentioned magical abilities. Your flying skills are definitely magical, Ron pointed out. No one flies like you do naturally, Harry. Even Charlie says so. They spent the next hour exploring the new technique, with varying degrees of success. Harry successfully transferred his innate sensing of magical objects to Hermione, allowing her to detect the enchantments on the burrow without casting any revealing spells. His attempt to share his flying instincts was less successful, while Hermione gained a better theoretical understanding of broom control. Her discomfort with heights remained an insurmountable barrier. Ron observed each transfer with growing fascination, occasionally offering insights that neither Harry nor Hermione had considered. You know what would be really useful, he suggested as they took a break. If you could transfer your Parseltongue ability to each other. That way, if you're ever separated, you'd both still have it. Harry and Hermione exchanged thoughtful looks. The ability to speak to serpents, originally Voldemort's talent, transferred to Harry through the failed killing curse and later shared with Hermione through their bond, had proven unexpectedly useful during their confrontation in the chamber. We should try it, Hermione agreed. But maybe not today. Magical language transfer is probably more complex. As the afternoon waned, Mrs. Weasley's voice called them in for dinner. The delicious smells of roast chicken and treacle tart wafted across the meadow, reminding Harry how different this summer was from all his previous ones. Here, he was wanted. Here, he belonged. And tonight was special for another reason: Dumbledore would be visiting to discuss their progress and plans for the coming school year. As they headed back toward the house, Ginny fell into step beside Harry. After her initial shyness around him had faded, they'd developed an easy friendship. Is it true what Ron says? She asked quietly. That you know who might try to come back again this year? Harry hesitated, not wanting to frighten her but unwilling to lie. Dumbledore thinks it's possible. That's partly why we're training so hard. Ginny nodded solemnly. Dad says things are getting strange at the ministry too. People acting oddly, old pureblood families suddenly making large donations to strange causes. Your dad's noticed that? Hermione asked, joining the conversation. Yeah. He says it reminds him of how things were before, you know, the first time. The light-hearted mood of their practice session evaporated, replaced by the weight of what might lie ahead. They'd defeated fragments of Voldemort twice now, but Harry harbored no illusions. The Dark Wizard would continue trying to return, and with each attempt, he might grow stronger, more desperate. Mrs. Weasley greeted them at the door, her warm smile and flower-dusted apron a comforting counterpoint to their sobering thoughts. Wash up, dears. Professor Dumbledore will be arriving any minute, and dinner's nearly ready. The headmaster arrived precisely as the golden clock on the Weasleys' mantel chimed 7. He appeared in the garden with a soft pop of apparition, resplendent in robes of midnight blue embroidered with silver stars. Mr. Weasley hurried out to greet him, and soon they were all seated around the magically enlarged kitchen table. Dinner was a lively affair despite the serious reason for Dumbledore's visit. The headmaster charmed the younger Weasleys with tales of his own school days and complimented Mrs. Weasley's cooking with such genuine enthusiasm that she blushed to the roots of her hair. Only after the last plate had been cleared and the younger children sent upstairs did the conversation turn to weightier matters. I must commend all three of you on your progress this summer, Dumbledore began, accepting a cup of tea from Mrs. Weasley. Your dedication to mastering these unusual abilities has been exemplary. Thank you, sir, Hermione replied, always pleased by academic praise. We've been practicing everything in your letters, including the magical transference technique you sent today. Ah, excellent. And were you successful? Harry nodded. I was able to use Hermione's version of the levitation charm. It felt natural, somehow. Like I'd always known how to do it that way but had forgotten until now. That is precisely how magical transference should feel, Dumbledore confirmed. Not like borrowing someone else's knowledge, but like recovering your own. Sir, Ron interjected, what exactly does all this training mean for the coming year? Are you expecting trouble? The twinkle in Dumbledore's eyes dimmed slightly. I believe in preparation, Mr. Weasley, rather than expectation. But yes, there are concerning signs that Voldemort may be attempting to find another path to restoration. Mr. and Mrs. Weasley exchanged worried glances. What kind of signs? Harry asked. Disappearances in Albania, where Voldemort was last rumored to be hiding. Strange movements among those who once served him. And most troublingly, increased activity around certain magical artifacts associated with the founders. Hermione straightened. Like the echoes we encountered. The cup, the diadem, the locket. Similar, yes. Though these are not echoes but actual historical artifacts connected to the founders that were never made into Horcruxes. Items of great magical significance that could, theoretically, be used in dark resurrection rituals. Harry felt a chill despite the warm kitchen. And you think Voldemort is trying to collect these artifacts? I believe he is seeking them, yes. Whether through his remaining followers or through possession of susceptible individuals, as he did with Professor Quirrell. Dumbledore set down his teacup. Which brings me to the true purpose of my visit tonight. From within his robes, he withdrew a small, velvet pouch. Opening it carefully, he removed what appeared to be an ordinary golden locket, though as Harry looked closer, he noticed tiny badgers engraved around its edge. This is Helga Hufflepuff's personal locket, not to be confused with the cup that was made into a Horcrux. While less famous than her other creations, it possesses remarkable protective qualities. Specifically, it shields the wearer from possession and mental intrusion. Mrs. Weasley gasped softly. Is that why? Are you saying Harry might be targeted for possession? It is a possibility we must consider, Dumbledore replied gravely. Voldemort has already demonstrated an awareness of the unique bond between Harry and Miss Granger. He may seek to exploit it, perhaps by attempting to control one of them directly. Harry and Hermione instinctively reached for each other's hands, the bond flaring protectively between them. The locket cannot prevent all forms of dark magic, Dumbledore continued, but it will provide significant protection against possession specifically. I have spent considerable effort recovering it from its previous owner, who was reluctant to part with such a historically significant item. He held the locket out to Harry. I would ask that you wear this when you return to Hogwarts, Harry. Miss Granger, I am still searching for a similar protective item for you. Harry accepted the locket with a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. It was warm to the touch, humming with subtle magic. Thank you, sir. But wouldn't Hermione be in greater danger? If Voldemort knows about our bond, he might target her to get to me. A thoughtful concern, Dumbledore acknowledged, but your scar creates a unique vulnerability that Miss Granger does not share. It forms a connection to Voldemort that might be exploited, particularly during moments when your mental defenses are weakened, such as in sleep. Mr. Weasley leaned forward. Albus, surely these precautions are excessive? You know who is weakened, his Horcrux is destroyed. The children have already faced more danger than anyone their age should. I understand your concern, Arthur, Dumbledore replied gently. But we must remain vigilant. Voldemort's greatest strength has always been his ability to return when least expected, to exploit any weakness or complacency. The conversation continued late into the evening, with Dumbledore outlining additional security measures being implemented at Hogwarts for the coming year. New wards to detect dark magic. Restrictions on certain forbidden artifacts. Even a contingent of specialist aurors discreetly stationed in Hogsmeade. When the headmaster finally departed, the Weasley household settled into an uneasy quiet. Harry sat on the front steps, Hufflepuff's locket cool against his chest beneath his shirt, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. Hermione found him there a few minutes later, sitting beside him without speaking. Through the bond, they shared their mixed emotions, determination, anxiety, a touch of fatigue at the thought of facing Voldemort yet again. We'll be ready, she said finally, breaking the silence. Whatever comes. Harry nodded, drawing comfort from her presence. Together. Always. Platform 9 3/4 bustled with the usual start-of-term chaos, students calling to friends, parents giving last-minute instructions, owls hooting indignantly from their cages. Harry, Hermione, and the Weasleys arrived with barely 10 minutes to spare, thanks to a last-minute search for Scabbers, who had hidden himself in one of Mrs. Weasley's garden boots. Now remember, Mrs. Weasley fussed as they loaded their trunks onto the train, write to us if anything unusual happens, anything at all. We will, Mum, Ron promised, accepting a squashed sandwich package with resigned familiarity. Harry found himself enveloped in one of Mrs. Weasley's crushing hugs. Take care of yourself, dear. No unnecessary risks. I'll try, Mrs. Weasley, he replied, genuinely touched by her concern. As the train whistle blew, they scrambled aboard, leaning out the windows to wave until the platform disappeared from view. Finding an empty compartment, they settled in for the journey, joined shortly by Neville Longbottom and his ever-escaping toad, Trevor. How was your summer, Neville? Hermione asked kindly. Not bad. Gran let me set up a small greenhouse for my plants. He studied Harry and Hermione curiously. Is it true what they're saying? About you two having some special magic? Harry exchanged a glance with Hermione. They'd expected questions, their bond had been impossible to hide by the end of the previous year, and wizard gossip traveled fast. We have a magical connection, Harry confirmed, seeing no reason to deny it. It's called an aurum vinculum. Neville's eyes widened. My Gran told me about those. They're incredibly rare, she said. There hasn't been a confirmed case in centuries. There was Gryffindor and Ravenclaw, Hermione pointed out. Well, yes, but that was 1,000 years ago. Neville looked between them with newfound respect. Gran says bonds like that usually mean you're destined for something important. Ron snorted. Like they haven't done enough important stuff already. defeating you-know-who twice before they're even 13. The conversation shifted to lighter topics as the countryside rolled by outside their window. Harry found himself enjoying the normality of it: chocolate frogs, speculation about the coming term, Neville's enthusiastic descriptions of his new plant specimens. For a few hours, they were just students returning to school, not young wizards preparing for a possible confrontation with the darkest sorcerer of the age. That illusion shattered when their compartment door slid open to reveal Draco Malfoy, flanked as usual by Crabbe and Goyle. "Well, if it isn't the golden couple," Malfoy drawled, his pale eyes flicking between Harry and Hermione. "Heard you spent the summer with the Weasleys, Potter. Couldn't find anyone better to take you in?" "Shove off, Malfoy," Ron growled. But Malfoy wasn't finished. "Father says the Ministry's been keeping tabs on your little, light show. Says it's unnatural, the kind of magic you've been doing. The kind that should be regulated." Harry felt Hermione's flash of indignation through the bond. "The Ministry has no jurisdiction over natural magical phenomena," she replied coolly. "The aurum vinculum is classified as a spontaneous magical manifestation, exempt from underage restrictions or regulatory oversight." Malfoy blinked, momentarily thrown by her precise legal knowledge. "Think you're so clever, Granger. But there are older, deeper rules in the magical world than whatever you've read in your precious books." His gaze shifted to Harry, something unreadable in his expression. "My father says a storm is coming. Best decide which shelter you'll seek when it breaks." With that cryptic warning, he retreated, closing the compartment door behind him. "What was that about?" Neville asked nervously. Malfoy being Malfoy, Ron dismissed, though his expression remained troubled. Harry wasn't so sure. There had been something different in Draco's manner, less of his usual straightforward antagonism and more, what? Warning? Recruitment? "He's scared," Hermione said quietly, picking up on Harry's thoughts. "I could see it in his eyes. Whatever his father has told him, it's frightened him." The rest of the journey passed with a subtle undercurrent of tension. As darkness fell and Hogwarts came into view, its windows glowing warmly against the night sky, Harry felt the familiar conflicting emotions: joy at returning to the place he considered home, anxiety about what dangers might await them there. The welcome feast was as magnificent as ever, the great hall resplendent with floating candles and starry enchanted ceiling. Dumbledore's welcome speech included the usual cautions about the Forbidden Forest and Mr. Filch's list of prohibited items, but also introduced a new face at the staff table, a severe-looking witch with a monocle whom he introduced as Madame Marchbanks, a special consultant on magical security. "Isn't she from the Wizengamot?" Hermione whispered. "And the Magical Examination Authority," Ron added. "Dad says she's tough as dragon hide and twice as fireproof." After the feast, as they made their way to Gryffindor Tower, Harry noticed subtle changes throughout the castle. New rune sequences carved discreetly into archways. Portraits that seemed more alert than usual, their painted eyes following students as they passed. Suits of armor positioned at strategic junctions rather than their usual decorative arrangements. Hogwarts was preparing for something, gearing up for defense in ways visible only if you knew to look. In the common room, Percy Weasley cleared his throat importantly. "First years, gather round for dormitory assignments and rules. The rest of you know where to go." As the returning students headed for their familiar dormitories, Professor McGonagall stepped through the portrait hole, an unusual sight on the first night back. "Mr. Potter, Miss Granger, Mr. Weasley," she called. "A word, if you please." They followed her back out into the corridor, where she led them to a section of the 7th floor Harry didn't recognize. "In light of your unique circumstances," McGonagall explained as they walked, "and with the headmaster's approval, alternative accommodation has been arranged for you three." She stopped before a portrait of a young wizard surrounded by various magical instruments. "Lux in tenebris," she stated clearly. The portrait swung open to reveal a comfortable sitting room with 3 doors leading off it. A cheerful fire burned in the grate, and large windows offered a view of the grounds and the lake beyond. These quarters will provide you with privacy for your continued training, as well as certain enhanced protections. McGonagall's stern expression softened slightly. They also recognize the practical reality that you three would likely find ways to circumvent curfew to meet regardless of where you were officially assigned to sleep. Ron's ears turned pink, but Harry and Hermione exchanged small smiles. McGonagall knew them too well. Your belongings have already been brought up. The doors lead to individual bedrooms, though they are connected internally should emergency consultation be required. Her tone made it clear that emergency consultation should be genuinely necessary. The portrait responds only to the password I've given you, plus magical recognition of your specific signatures. Thank you, Professor, Hermione said sincerely. This is very thoughtful. Thank the headmaster, Miss Granger. I merely implemented his instructions. But McGonagall looked pleased nonetheless. Now, get some rest. Classes begin promptly tomorrow. After she'd gone, the three explored their new accommodation with growing appreciation. The sitting room contained a small library of advanced magical texts, comfortable seating arranged around the fire, and a round table perfect for studying or planning. The individual bedrooms were cozy but well appointed, each customized subtly to its occupant's preferences. This is brilliant, Ron declared, discovering that his room featured a miniature model of a Quidditch pitch complete with tiny flying players. Way better than the dormitory. Harry found his room decorated in Gryffindor colors but with a subtle integration of Ravenclaw blue, a nod to his bond with Hermione. A perch for Hedwig stood by the window, and on the bedside table sat a framed wizard photograph of his parents, dancing in autumn leaves. Through the connecting door, he could sense Hermione exploring her own room, her delight at the extensive bookshelf evident through their bond. The arrangement was perfect, allowing them individual space while accommodating their need for proximity. Later, as they gathered in the sitting room before bed, Harry voiced the question that had been nagging at him since dinner. Did you notice how prepared everyone seems? The castle, the teachers, it's like they're expecting something specific. Ron nodded. Dad mentioned more Aurors being called into active service over the summer. Said it was just routine training exercises, but he didn't believe it. And Malfoy's warning, Hermione added, curled in an armchair with Crookshanks purring on her lap. A storm is coming. That's not his usual style of threat. Harry absently touched Hufflepuff's locket beneath his pajama shirt. Dumbledore must have intelligence he hasn't shared with us yet. Something more concrete than just possibilities. We should keep our eyes open, Ron suggested. All of us. Not just for the obvious stuff, but anything unusual. First signs might be subtle. They agreed to remain vigilant, though Harry suspected that whatever was coming wouldn't remain subtle for long. As they bid each other good night and retreated to their separate rooms, he found himself grateful for these moments of peace, knowing from experience how quickly they could shatter. September passed in a blur of classes, homework, and continued training. Their new professors quickly recognized that Harry and Hermione were operating well beyond the standard second-year curriculum, providing them with advanced material and additional challenges. Even Snape, while still cold and critical, had ceased questioning their accelerated abilities and simply assigned them more complex potions. Their private lessons with Dumbledore continued weekly, focusing now on defensive applications of their bond. They learned to create layered shields that could repel even the headmaster's strongest hexes, to extend their magical senses beyond physical barriers, and to perform limited magical healing on each other. The true strength of the Aurum Vinculum, Dumbledore explained during one session, lies not in raw power, though that is considerable, but in adaptability. Unlike ordinary magic, which follows fixed patterns and principles, bond magic responds to need and intention in ways that can surprise even the caster. This adaptability manifested in unexpected ways. When practicing dueling with Ron, Harry found he could anticipate certain spells before they were cast if Hermione focused on reading Ron's magical aura. When Hermione struggled with a particularly difficult transfiguration problem, Harry's intuitive understanding of magical transformation flowed through the bond, helping her visualize the solution. Most significant was their growing ability to perform wandless magic when in direct physical contact. Small spells at first, lighting candles, summoning nearby objects, but growing steadily more complex as they practiced. Outside their lessons, they found subtle ways to strengthen their bond through daily interaction. Morning meditation together in their sitting room. Brief touches that allowed them to share impressions of their separate classes. Combined study sessions where they processed information as a unit rather than as individuals. Ron, remarkably, never seemed jealous of their deepening connection. He had found his own niche as their tactical advisor and grounding influence, keeping them balanced when they risked becoming too absorbed in the bond. You two would spend all day glowing and floating things if someone didn't remind you to eat occasionally, he pointed out one evening, pushing plates of shepherd's pie in front of them after they'd spent hours practicing. October arrived with howling winds and torrential rain that lashed against the castle windows. The weather mirrored a growing sense of unease that seemed to permeate Hogwarts. More security measures appeared, restrictions on student movement after dinner, increased patrols by prefects and staff, additional warding on the castle entrances. "Something's definitely coming," Hermione whispered as they watched Flitwick and McGonagall reinforcing the charms on the great oak front doors one evening. "They're battening down the hatches." But against what? Ron wondered. "There's been nothing in the Daily Prophet about you-know-who or dark wizard activity." "There wouldn't be," Harry replied. "Not if the Ministry is trying to avoid panic." Their answer came in late October, mere days before Halloween. They were in History of Magic, struggling to stay awake during Professor Bin's monotonous lecture on goblin rebellions, when a silver cat Patronus, McGonagall's, streaked into the classroom. "All students return to dormitories immediately," it announced in McGonagall's crisp voice. "All staff to the entrance hall. This is not a drill." The classroom erupted in confused chatter as Binns, looking more animated than they'd ever seen him, instructed them to follow prefects back to their common rooms. In the corridor, they found similar scenes of organized chaos as students from all houses were directed toward safety. Harry grabbed Hermione's hand, the bond flaring with shared alarm. "We need to find out what's happening." Ron was already scanning the flow of students, his tactical mind assessing options. This way, he decided, pulling them toward a tapestry concealing one of the secret passages they discovered the previous year. The passage led them to a fourth-floor corridor with windows overlooking the main grounds. What they saw froze them in place. Dark figures were assembling at the edge of the forbidden forest, dozens of them, some clearly human, others decidedly not. Even from this distance, the malevolent energy emanating from the gathering was palpable. "Death Eaters," Ron whispered, pointing to the black-robed figures with silver masks. "And those others, are those giants?" "Not just giants," Hermione replied, her voice tight. "Look at the smaller figures moving between them. Those are acromantulas. And there, those ghostly shapes, dementors." Harry felt the locket against his chest grow warm, as if responding to the dark forces gathering below. "Voldemort's built his army. Just like Dumbledore feared. But where is he?" Ron asked, scanning the assembled forces. "I don't see anyone who could be you-know-who himself." Harry was about to respond when pain lanced through his scar, white-hot and blinding. He stumbled, would have fallen if Hermione hadn't caught him, the bond automatically channeling away some of the pain. "Harry." Her voice seemed distant through the haze of agony. "What is it?" "He's here," Harry gasped, clutching his forehead. "Not out there, in the castle. Voldemort's inside Hogwarts." Even as he spoke, a high, cold voice echoed through the corridors, magically amplified to reach every corner of the school. "Students and staff of Hogwarts," it said, sending chills down their spines. "Your defenses have been breached. Your headmaster is occupied with my diversion at the forest's edge. Resistance is futile and will result only in unnecessary bloodshed." Harry struggled to his feet, the pain in his scar receding to a dull throb. "We need to warn Dumbledore." "How?" Ron demanded. If he's already at the forest with the other teachers, my Patronus, Hermione said suddenly. I've been practicing it with McGonagall. I think I can cast it now, especially with the bond. She drew her wand, her face a mask of concentration. Expecto Patronum. A silvery otter burst from her wand, more substantial than Harry would have expected for a first successful casting. The influence of their bond, he realized, his own affinity for the Patronus charm flowing to her through their connection. Find Dumbledore, she instructed the shimmering creature. Tell him Voldemort is inside the castle. We're tracking him. The otter circled once around them, then streaked away, passing through the solid wall toward the grounds below. You told it we're tracking him, Ron noted. Does that mean we're not going to our quarters like we're supposed to? Harry met his friend's eyes. We've been training for this. If Voldemort's in the castle, he's after something specific, probably another way to restore himself fully. The Founder's artifacts Dumbledore mentioned, Hermione realized. He must have found one. So where would he go? Ron asked. If he's after a Founder's artifact. They answered together, the Room of Requirement. Their training sessions had included exploration of the magical room Dumbledore had shown them, a chamber that transformed itself to meet the user's needs. They'd learned it had originally been created by the Founders as a shared workspace, containing traces of their original magic. If there's anywhere in Hogwarts that might house a hidden Founder's artifact, it would be there, Hermione reasoned as they hurried toward the 7th floor. The castle was eerily quiet, all students presumably secured in their common rooms, all staff responding to the threat outside. They encountered no one as they raced through corridors and up staircases, guided by Harry's increasingly painful scar. He's definitely up ahead, Harry confirmed as they approached the 7th floor corridor where the Room of Requirement was located. And he's excited. I can feel it. They slowed, moving more cautiously now, wands drawn. The corridor appeared empty, but the wall where the room's entrance should appear was already showing a door, ornate and ancient-looking, carved with symbols representing all 4 houses. He's inside, Hermione whispered. What's our plan? Ron assessed the situation with remarkable calm. We need to know what we're dealing with before we charge in. Can you two use the bond to sense what's beyond the door? Harry and Hermione joined hands, focusing their combined perception. The golden energy of the bond extended outward, seeping through the wooden door like tendrils of light. There's an enormous room, Harry reported, eyes closed in concentration. Like a cathedral filled with junk. Thousands of objects piled everywhere. The Room of Hidden Things, Hermione murmured. One of the room's manifestations. I see movement, Harry continued. Not just one person, 3, I think. Voldemort is there, but he's different. More solid than the version we saw in the chamber, but still not fully corporeal. Like a ghost with substance. And the others? I can't tell. Their magical signatures are confused. Almost like, the door burst open, cutting off Harry's assessment. Standing in the doorway was not Voldemort, but Draco Malfoy, his pale face twisted with fear and determination, his wand pointed directly at them. Run, you idiots, he hissed, his voice cracking. He knows you're here. Before they could react, a second figure appeared behind Malfoy, Professor Quirrell, whom they had believed dead after the Chamber of Secrets incident. His eyes glowed with an unnatural red light, and his movements were jerky, puppet-like. Potter, he said, his voice overlaid with Voldemort's higher tones. How convenient that you saved me the trouble of hunting you down. With a casual flick of his wand, he sent Malfoy flying into the wall. The boy slumped to the floor, unconscious. Harry raised his wand, feeling Hermione do the same beside him. Ron stepped forward, positioning himself to cover their flanks. Quirrell died in the chamber, Harry said steadily. You're just possessing his corpse. A terrible smile spread across Quirrell's face. Perceptive of you, Harry Potter. Yes, poor Quirrell expired after our last encounter, but his body has proven, serviceable for my temporary needs. Especially after certain modifications. He gestured behind him, into the room of requirement. Come. Someone else is most eager to meet you. They had little choice. With Quirrell's wand trained on them, they entered the vast cathedral-like space of the room of hidden things. Towering piles of abandoned objects stretched in every direction, broken furniture, banned books, discarded robes, thousands of items hidden by generations of Hogwarts inhabitants. In a cleared space at the center stood a figure that made Harry's blood run cold. Tall and skeletally thin, with chalk-white skin and glowing red eyes, Lord Voldemort, no longer the schoolboy Tom Riddle or a mere possession spirit, but something between ghost and corporeal being. "Welcome," he said softly. "To what shall be my second birth." Beside Voldemort stood the third person Harry had sensed, a girl with flaming red hair whom they recognized with horror. "Ginny," Ron gasped, starting forward only to be stopped by Quirrell's wand. "Not another step, Weasley," Quirrell warned. "Your sister is providing an essential service." Ginny stood unnaturally still, her eyes blank and unfocused. In her hands, she held a small, golden object, a delicate diadem set with a brilliant sapphire. "Ravenclaw's diadem," Hermione breathed. "Not the Horcrux echo, the actual diadem." "Indeed, Miss Granger," Voldemort confirmed. "One of the few artifacts connected to the Founders that I had not yet corrupted in my previous life. Its power of enhanced knowledge and wisdom will serve me well as I return to full strength." "You're using Ginny to channel its power," Harry realized. "Like you used Quirrell. The girl is an ideal vessel, young, magical, and surprisingly resistant. Her life force is strong enough to sustain the transfer process." Voldemort moved closer to Ginny, his semi-transparent hand hovering near the diadem. "Soon, her energy and the diadem's power will provide me with a new body, one unbound by the limitations of possession or parasitic existence." Harry felt sick. Ginny was being drained just as Quirrell had been in the chamber, her life force feeding Voldemort's restoration. Through the bond, he sensed Hermione's rapid thoughts, searching for a solution. "You won't succeed," Harry said, playing for time. "Dumbledore will stop you." Voldemort laughed, a high, cold sound that echoed unnaturally in the vast room. "Dumbledore is rather occupied with my little distraction. By the time he realizes it's merely a diversion, I will have completed the ritual and departed with my prize." "Why are you telling us this?" Ron demanded, his eyes fixed on his sister's blank face. "Why not just kill us?" "Because, Mr. Weasley, your deaths would be wasteful when you could serve a greater purpose." Voldemort gestured to Harry and Hermione. "The aurum vinculum these two have developed is remarkable, a source of power I had not anticipated. I intend to study it, to understand how their bond destroyed my Horcruxes, and then to harness that same energy for my own purposes." As he spoke, Harry felt Hermione's plan crystallizing through their bond, not in words but in images, intentions, possibilities. The locket. Hufflepuff's protective locket that Harry wore beneath his robes had been growing warmer throughout the confrontation. If they could somehow transfer its protection to Ginny, disrupt the connection Voldemort had established. Harry gave an imperceptible nod, understanding flowing between them. Ron, though not privy to the bond, caught the subtle shift in their posture and prepared himself, hand tightening on his wand. "You can't harness our bond," Harry said, taking a small step forward. "It doesn't work for you, we've already proven that." "In its current form, perhaps not," Voldemort conceded. "But magic can be reshaped, repurposed. The golden light that flows between you can be extracted, studied, recreated." Another step forward. "Is that what happened to Malfoy? Was he helping you research the bond?" A flicker of annoyance crossed Voldemort's inhuman features. Young Draco was merely a convenient tool, his father's influence provided certain access within the ministry that proved useful. His attack of conscience was unexpected. Harry was close enough now to see the diadem clearly, to notice how its sapphire pulsed with light in rhythm with Ginny's weakening heartbeat. Just a few more steps. Stop there, Potter, Quirrell barked, noticing his advance. Any closer and the girl suffers. Harry froze, raising his hand slightly. I just want to understand. If our bond destroyed your Horcruxes, how can you possibly hope to control it? The question seemed to please Voldemort, appealing to his vanity. Your bond responded to the Horcruxes because they contained fragments of my soul, pieces that recognized the threat you posed. But the energy itself is neutral, like all magic. It is merely a matter of proper application. While Voldemort spoke, Hermione had been silently preparing the transference spell they practiced over the summer, the technique that allowed them to share magical abilities through the bond. Now, she focused on Harry's locket, on the protective magic imbued within it. Harry could feel her accessing the knowledge through their connection, preparing to channel the protection outward, toward Ginny. They would have one chance, one moment to break Voldemort's hold on the youngest Weasley before the ritual progressed too far. Voldemort must have sensed something through his connection to Harry's scar, for he suddenly stiffened, red eyes narrowing. What are you, now? Harry shouted. Several things happened at once. Ron fired a blasting curse at the ceiling above Quirrell, sending debris raining down on the possessed body. Harry lunged forward, ripping the locket from around his neck. And Hermione, channeling all her focus through the bond, cast the transference spell, not to Harry this time, but projecting it through him toward Ginny. Transfero protectum, she cried, golden light erupting from her wand. The light engulfed Harry for a split second, then shot from his outstretched hand holding the locket, striking Ginny square in the chest. The girl gasped, her blank eyes suddenly clearing as Hufflepuff's protection flowed into her. The diadem in her hands flared blue, then dimmed as the connection between it and Voldemort was severed. Ginny stumbled backward, the artifact falling from her grasp. No! Voldemort's scream of rage echoed through the room. His semi-corporeal form flickered, the energy he'd been drawing from Ginny suddenly cut off. Stop them! Quirrell emerged from the debris, his body moving with unnatural speed despite the damage it had sustained. He fired curses in rapid succession, not at Harry or Hermione, but at Ron, who was racing toward his sister. Protego! Harry and Hermione shouted together, their combined shield charm intercepting the dark magic before it could reach Ron. The golden light of their bond surged, stronger than ever, creating a dome of protection around all four of them. Voldemort hammered against it with waves of dark magic, each impact sending shudders through the shield but failing to penetrate. We can't hold this forever, Hermione gasped, the strain of maintaining such powerful protection evident in her voice. We don't need forever, Ron replied grimly, supporting Ginny with one arm while his wand remained raised. Just long enough. As if on cue, a phoenix's cry echoed through the room of hidden things. Fawkes swooped through the open door, followed immediately by Albus Dumbledore, his face a mask of cold fury unlike anything Harry had ever seen. Tom, the headmaster said quietly, his wand already moving in complex patterns. This ends now. Voldemort's attention shifted from the shield to the new threat. Dumbledore. Always interfering. Lower the shield, Dumbledore instructed Harry and Hermione as he advanced. Get Miss Weasley to safety. They complied, the golden dome fading as they redirected their energy. Ron gathered Ginny in his arms, her small form limp but conscious, and began moving toward the door. Harry bent quickly to retrieve the fallen diadem, sensing its importance. What followed was unlike any duel Harry had ever witnessed or imagined. Dumbledore and Voldemort circled each other, their magic manifesting in ways that defied conventional spellcasting, elemental forces colliding in bursts of light and shadow, transfigured creatures battling in mid-air, illusory duplicates confounding and distracting. Quirrell lunged toward Harry and Hermione, his wand aiming for the diadem clutched in Harry's hand. Give it to me, Potter. Expelliarmus, they shouted together, the combined disarming charm hitting with such force that it not only sent Quirrell's wand flying but blasted him backward into a teetering mountain of discarded objects. The pile collapsed, burying the possessed body beneath decades of forgotten items. A horrible scream emerged from the debris, not Quirrell's voice, but Voldemort's higher pitch, as the already dead vessel was crushed beyond repair. Voldemort's spectral form flickered violently, his concentration on the duel broken by the destruction of his host. Dumbledore seized the opportunity, casting an incantation in a language Harry didn't recognize. Golden chains of light erupted from the headmaster's wand, wrapping around Voldemort's semi-corporeal shape. "This is not over, Dumbledore," Voldemort hissed as the chains tightened, restricting his movement. "I cannot die. I will return." "Perhaps," Dumbledore acknowledged calmly, continuing his spell weaving. "But not today, and not here." With a final, complex wand movement, Dumbledore completed whatever containment magic he was performing. Voldemort's form compressed, shrinking until it was merely a point of dark light hovering in midair. Then, with a sound like distant thunder, it vanished, banished or contained, Harry couldn't tell which. The sudden silence was deafening. "Is he gone?" Hermione asked tentatively. Dumbledore lowered his wand slowly, looking older and more tired than Harry had ever seen him. "Temporarily contained. Without a body or a host, and with his gathered forces dispersed, he has been forced into retreat." He turned to them, his gaze settling on the diadem in Harry's hand and the locket now clutched by Ginny. "You three have once again demonstrated remarkable courage and quick thinking. Though I must say, I had rather hoped you would follow the instructions to remain in your quarters." Despite the gravity of the situation, Harry felt a smile tug at his lips. "With respect, Professor, when have we ever done that?" The hospital wing was crowded that evening. Ginny occupied one bed, pale but recovering as Madame Pomfrey administered restorative potions. Draco Malfoy lay in another, a bandage around his head where he'd struck the wall. Various staff members had sustained injuries battling the diversionary forces at the forest's edge, though none seriously. Harry, Hermione, and Ron sat beside Ginny's bed, recounting the events in the room of requirement to a visibly shaken Mr. and Mrs. Weasley. "You saved her life," Mrs. Weasley said tearfully, enveloping first Ron, then Harry and Hermione in crushing hugs. "All of you. My brave, brave children." "It was Harry and Hermione's bond magic that really did it," Ron insisted, his ears pink with embarrassment at his mother's praise. "That transference spell was brilliant. But we couldn't have done it without your distraction," Hermione pointed out. "Or your quick thinking to get to Ginny immediately." Mr. Weasley, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. "How did Ginny become involved in this? She's just a first year. How could you know who have gotten to her?" "I think I can answer that," said a weak voice from the bed. Ginny had awoken, her brown eyes clear but haunted. "It was a diary. A diary that wrote back to me." As Ginny explained about the small black book she'd found among her school things, a diary that had responded to her written thoughts, gradually gaining her trust before beginning to possess her, Harry felt pieces clicking into place. It was another Horcrux, he realized, looking to Dumbledore who had joined them. "One that wasn't in Britain when our bond destroyed the others." Dumbledore nodded gravely. "I believe so, yes. Tom Riddle's school diary, which he likely entrusted to Lucius Malfoy for safekeeping many years ago. Mr. Malfoy must have planted it among Miss Weasley's belongings during the confrontation at Flourish and Blots before term began." "But why would Draco's father do that?" Ron demanded. "What was the point?" "To open the Chamber of Secrets again, I suspect," Dumbledore replied. "To release the basilisk against Muggle-born students. Though I doubt he understood the diary's true nature or its connection to Voldemort's soul." "And Draco? Where does he fit in?" Hermione asked, glancing toward the bed where the Slytherin boy lay sleeping. "Young Mr. Malfoy appears to have discovered his father's plot and his sister student's plight rather late in the game. His attempt to warn you, at great personal risk, suggests there may be more to him than his public persona indicates." Harry remembered Malfoy's cryptic warning on the train, "The storm is coming," and his desperate instruction to run when he'd found them outside the room of requirement. Perhaps there was indeed more to Draco than they'd given him credit for. "What about the diadem and the locket?" he asked. "Are they safe?" "Quite safe," Dumbledore assured him. "Both artifacts have been secured in my office, though I believe the locket's protection may have permanently transferred to Miss Weasley in the process of breaking Voldemort's hold on her." Ginny touched her chest wonderingly. "I can feel it. Something warm, like a shield inside me." "Helga Hufflepuff's protection has claimed you, it seems," Dumbledore said with a small smile. "A rare honor, and one that may serve you well in the future." As night fell and the hospital wing quieted, Harry found himself standing by the window, gazing out at the now peaceful grounds. The moon cast silver light across the lake, and in the distance, the forbidden forest stood dark and still, all traces of the earlier confrontation erased. Hermione joined him, her presence a comforting warmth through their bond. "Another Halloween," she said softly. "We seem to have a pattern." Harry nodded, remembering. 1 year ago exactly, Hermione had confessed her love during the troll attack, triggering the bond that had changed everything. Now they had faced Voldemort once more, their connection stronger than ever. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't said it?" he asked, turning to face her. "That night with the troll. If you hadn't told me you loved me." Hermione considered this, her brown eyes reflective in the moonlight. "Sometimes. We might have defeated the troll anyway. Become friends with Ron. Had a relatively normal first year. And Voldemort's Horcruxes would still exist," Harry added. "He might be closer to returning to power." "The bond happened when it needed to happen," Hermione decided. "Not just for us, but for everyone." Harry took her hand, feeling the now familiar golden warmth flow between them. It no longer manifested visibly unless they purposely channeled significant magic, having matured into a more subtle, constant connection. "I'm glad you said it," he told her quietly. "Not just because of what it meant for stopping Voldemort. But because it was true." Hermione's smile softened, her emotions flowing through the bond, affection, certainty, and that steady, unwavering love that had started it all. "It still is." "For me too," Harry confirmed, squeezing her hand gently. They stood in comfortable silence, watching stars emerge in the night sky, aware that beyond this moment of peace lay challenges still to come. Voldemort had been contained but not destroyed. His followers, though scattered, would regroup. The future held uncertainties and dangers they could only begin to imagine. But they would face it together, Harry and Hermione, with Ron beside them, and now Ginny too, linked by experience and shared purpose. Their bond had proved more powerful than any of them could have anticipated, not just in its magical manifestation but in the connections it had fostered between them all. As they returned to the others, Harry felt a surge of determination that had nothing to do with the bond's magic and everything to do with the people around him. Whatever came next, they would be ready, not just because of golden light or extraordinary powers, but because of what they had built together: trust, loyalty, and love. In the end, that was the true power Voldemort would never understand, and the one thing he could never defeat. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.